It's showtime.
Okay, Tokyo, South America, Australia, France, Germany, UK, Africa.
Here we go. Head On with Bob Kincaid. 3 hours of conversation, cussin' and a discussin' with America's only born and bred Southern liberal talk host. Head On with Bob Kincaid is brought to you each night by Coal River Mountain Watch. Coal River Mountain Watch invites you to become part of the solution, part of a sustainable future, part of the uprising against mountaintop removal. Coal River Mountain Watch, crmw.net. And now, from high in the hills of beautiful West Bicod, Virginia, here's Bob Kincaid on the Head On Radio Network.
Well, howdy. And here we go. We are off and running for the beginning of November, the first day of November 2018. This is The Horn. Headon.live is where we live. That's where you go if you'd like to be part of the merry, wacky, zany, real-time multimedia madcap extravaganza that is The Horn chat room. Yes, indeed. Pick yourself out a screen name and a password and jump right into the merry, wacky zaniness, where you'll be greeted by the likes of Anatole and Laborman and Little Thunder and V.T. Blom, and more arriving presently, all capably moderated by longtime inveterate, indefatigable veteran chat room moderator Sparky, who, being a Spacing Guild master, has folded space to become Man Cave, as well as pinch hit midweek utility chat room moderator and all-around great guy, Steve from Georgistan. Hi, I'm Bob Kincaid. It is Thorn in the Side Thursday on the program, but before we do anything else, being as how it's the beginning of a brand new month, it's time to say thank you. Yes, indeed. Thanks go out. We have subscribers on the first of the month. Thanks to Terry up in Amherst, where only the H is silent. Thanks to Lauren out on the frozen marges of Alberta. Thank you to Peter. Thank you, Peter, very kindly. Thank you very much indeed to our buddy Rusty. Thank you, Rusty. Thanks very kindly to Joseph for being a partial sponsor of the program. Thanks to our buddy Smitty in Florida. Thank you, Smitty. And thanks to Bob in North Carolina. And thanks to Kay out in California. Thank you, Kay. That is that's a good start to the month. Of course, I don't know, maybe going forward we can start a campaign of let's get one new subscriber every evening. If we did that by this time next year, I'd be done talking about fundraising. One new subscriber every day. Wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah, it would. But it is the first day of the month, and the first day of the month, oh, thank you to John as well. Thank you, John, for jumping in. And just a note for any of you out there, if you see something coming from PayPal saying that that the Horn has suspended your payment or your donation or whatever, please rest assured we didn't. I'm dealing with that issue with a couple of instances, and I'm going to try to get through to them. Probably, well, I tried to get through today, and I got someone I couldn't understand. So I'll try it again tomorrow, and hopefully the U.S. call center is open. Go figure. But no, no one's suspending anything here. So that's just a program announcement, program note. But thanks very much to all of our subscribers. And this being the first day of the month, we open the month with Shirley's Memorial Challenge in memory of our dear friend Bruce up in Wisconsin. I still have the hat that Bruce gave me for the Democratic group in the county where he lived. It's got a donkey on it, and he was very proud when he handed it to me. He said, "You'll notice this donkey has balls." Yeah, and he'd made certain of that because he was tired of seeing Democrats walk around, I don't know, playing go along, get along. He wanted to fight back as hard as the Republicans were fighting them up in Wisconsin. But it's in Bruce's memory. We have a $200 challenge this evening, and that $200 challenge, of course, goes like this. There's an offer of $200 that is a perpetuation of the challenge that Bruce started years ago. It is kindly provided by our buddy Gary, labor man, along with Ralphs and one individual who prefers to remain anonymous. And if that challenge is met, then if we raise the $200 we try to raise on any giving on any given evening, but in particular on the first day of the month, if we raise the $200 we try to raise, then Shirley's Memorial Challenge Day Wisconsin via Laborman and Ralphs and the anonymous kind contributor doubles it. Okay, so with any luck, we'll knock that out this evening. Just 10 folks at $20 or 20 folks at $10, and we will qualify and get the your 10 will become 20, your 20, 40, or 50, 100, all the way up to $200. And the PayPal interface is, of course, over at headon.live. Okay, headon.live, and there's also a Patreon button there if you prefer to use Patreon. Okay, and I'm told that we are streaming merrily along on both the White Rose stream and the headon.live stream. That's inspiring. Sometimes there's an issue with the White Rose stream. I don't know why. Maybe the server is very, very old. I'm not sure. So it is Thorn in the Side Thursday. And before we get to all the thorns, we've had some fantastic conversations this week, and I thought I would perpetuate this Thorn in the Side Thursday. Let's see here. And I thought we would, what with all the troops having been set up to stare at the dirt, the sand, and whatnot down in the along the Mexican border, and what with Halloween over and the annual parade of stories of people who don't know better than to dress up as Nazis. Well, you get the idea. I thought we would take a break and step back and talk about something that's vitally important, and that everybody can have a hand in and everybody can take part in. A very dear friend of mine, going all the way back to our days there matriculating at Harvard on the Mon up in Morgantown, West Virginia. Dan Fisher works in the television industry, and he's got some pretty amazing credits to his accomplishment. But recently, he had an experience of an entirely different sort, and I'll let him give you the details of it. But I think you're going to be amazed by the time we are done chatting. Dan Fisher, old friend, Welcome to the Horn. It's good to talk to you.
Am I actually on the Horn? The Horn?
You're on the Horn, the one and only.
First of all, I have very little Skype experience. I am of that age where I should. I'm not that decrepit yet that I can't figure out how to do a click and join the Skype generation. But at the same time, this is one of my few Skype experiences, so I'll try to be as not awkward as I can.
Well, you're fine.
You're amazing and fascinating as you just built me up to be.
Well, you are amazing and fascinating, and you have been for a very long time.
Oh God.
And don't worry. No, you're not get off my lawn, screams at clouds, old guy yet. So
no, not yet.
Yeah,
although my daughter tells me that only old people go on Facebook, which I habitate a lot. I don't do Instagram. I only do Facebook, and that's the dividing line, and I'm fine with that. I've got gray hair. I'm not fooling nobody. I don't suck in my gut anymore when an attractive young woman comes by. I just let it all hang out.
Well,
not all, but I'm not Kavanaugh. But anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, that was quick. See, I was waiting for that. Well, you'll be fine. You sound great, and so it's like the early part of the 20th century. Here's the newfangled telephone. Pick up the handset and talk into the talk into that there hole in that there box, and we'll be fine.
Okay, I'm just seeing the youth audience just starting to, hey, what's on some of the other podcasts? So I'll try to get to the point here, I guess. So we could talk about Atari and TRS-80s all day long, but maybe we should get to the big stuff here.
Yeah, we'll leave Pong for another day. What was it? A couple of years ago, you got a virus. Is that about the size of it?
Well, this is what it is. Yeah, about 8 years ago, as you mentioned, I work in film and television as a props person. I've been doing that since 1986 when I graduated WVU. So I've been doing that for over 30 years. And about 8 years ago, I was in Detroit, Michigan, working on a really bad Miley Cyrus movie. As opposed to all those great movies she's done, this was not one of her better ones.
I was going to ask where the dividing line was, but that's me.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I was working on a movie in Detroit, and there was a virus that had been going around the crew, and I seemed to have had gotten it, and so I was like, well, and I was the prop master, so I'm the boss of my own department, and my department had 3 people, so that's all I had. So in film and in television, we're really like circus folk in that it takes a tremendous amount for us not to get up at 5 a.m. and get our butts into work every day by 7 a.m. We're very committed, and so much of our identity is as show business folk. So I was there, and I was working through illness and feeling just like crap. I'm allowed to cuss on this, right? Because this is podcast.
You can say any word your mother would be ashamed you knew.
And that George Carlin would have celebrated.
Exactly.
I'm not a foul mouth by nature, but sometimes it slips out. We'll see. Anyway, so I'm not feeling well, and there was one day in particular where I go to lie down to take a nap at lunch, and I wake up 4 hours later on the floor of a high school library with people yelling my name. I had just passed out cold. And that night, I went into my hotel room and I lied down and I realized, I'm having to think about breathing. That's not good. This should be involuntary. So in that case, I checked myself into the emergency room and I was told, Mr. Fisher, you have congestive heart failure, which I was in my young 40s at the time. So this was shocking news to me. I had just always modeled myself as the picture of more or less perfect health, as most of us tend to do. So I stayed in Henry Ford Hospital for a good week or so while they drained 30 pounds of fluid out of my chest and my abdominal area. And that fluid had been pressing against my heart and my other organs, keeping them from working properly. So they did that. They sent me home. They said, take these medications and, for a number of weeks you shouldn't work. Just take it easy and then you'll be fine. But I wasn't getting fine. And for the following 8 years or so, I just kept taking meds, and I dropped salt from the diet. I dropped fat. I dropped booze from the daily, or even whatever. No fat, no booze, no nothing, no fun. But I'm willing to do that because I want to survive. And things were going fine. My job is such that the hours are very long. 12 to 14-hour days is the normal work time. So I live in the suburbs of New York City. I have for over 10 years. So it's a good hour to 2 hours commute each direction just to get to work. So when you factor all that in, I'm working with a heart that's not at full functioning level, and I'm getting 6 hours of sleep, and I'm doing that for most of my time. And so it's bound to wear you down, and I wasn't improving. And then I was working on one of my favorite jobs ever, The Americans. I was a prop master for the final 2 seasons. And I love that job, and I love the people involved, everywhere from the showrunners to the actors to all of the crew. It was just the best experience. And it was so heartbreaking to me one day when I realized I was so sick I had to go back in. And I went to see my cardiologist, and she immediately put me back into the hospital. And I thought it was just going to be another drain 30 pounds out of me and send me on my way. But instead, what I was told is, Mr. Fisher, your heart and your organs are failing, and we need to take some measures here. We're going to put you on the organ donor list. You're going to need a new heart down the road, and we're very happy to give you one. It's going to take time, probably a year to 2 years. In the meantime, they hooked up what's called an LVAD to my heart, which is a very small pump, like the size of, I think, a walnut. And that pump is then attached to a cable, which comes out of a sliver in my abdomen to batteries, which are about the size of the kind you have on your average cordless screwdriver, like a DeWalt screw gun type thing. And I would have to wear that in a holster, a battery on each side of me, for the next 9 months. And of course, I had to take some more time off. But I did actually go back to a limited form of work for a while, with these batteries attached to me. Now, you are still there, right? I hate when I talk so long that.
Oh no, I'm here, and I'm absolutely rapt hearing this.
Okay. So I one morning, September 20th to be exact, I got a call at 4 a.m. About an hour before I was supposed to wake up for work, and I looked at the phone. I saw the 212, which is Manhattan area code. And I thought, it's too early for robocalls. This has to be the one. And I was right. And they said, Mr. Fisher, we have a heart for you. And it was a real, it was such a surprise that for a minute I was hesitant about saying yes to it, because I was expecting to do it 9 months or so later. I just got extremely lucky. And so, but yes, I came to my senses, and Helene, my wife, and I, raced to the hospital. And the thing is, when you do this process of having a heart transplant, it's every cliche you've seen in one of those ER type shows, only it's true, in that the donor was from a different state. So what my doctor, and it was still inside the body at the moment. And as soon as I said yes to yes, we're going to do this, the team sprang into action. There were 2 surgeons from New York Presbyterian Columbia Hospital in New York City that flew on a private jet down to the state to examine the body and open up the chest and look at that heart and make sure it would be the right one and was healthy and would be good for me for a long time. Once they had that approved, once they decided this is a good one for him, they removed the heart from that body. They put it in some form of ice chest, I can imagine. They got back on that private plane, and they flew back to New York City, where there were ambulances and police cars waiting for them at the airport to get that heart to Columbia Presbyterian.
Wow.
And while all of that is happening, while they're flying down and while they're examining a corpse, who that corpse is my hero for the rest of my life, by the way. I should not demean him in any way. While they're doing all of that, I am in the hospital in New York City undergoing anesthesia. They're cutting me open. They're doing all the things you've seen in the movies. They're doing everything they can but insert a heart into me. They're getting it so prepped so that not 1 minute will be wasted. And sure enough, they get the heart with the private jet, with the cop cars to the hospital, and they put it inside my body. They have to do that from the time they cut it out of the original donor. They have a 4-hour window, and that's it. That includes the flight time. That includes everything. That includes sewing it up. So they did it. And my doctor, Dr. Takeda, the surgeon, is world famous at this. And everybody likes to brag about their doctors, or at least most people do. If I've had a nickel for every time I've heard that their doctor was the best, I could afford an additional heart to keep in the fridge just in case. But nonetheless, my doctor, he brags, was part of the team that had operated on President Clinton when he had his bypass surgery some years ago. So if that guy is good enough for Bill Clinton, he's good enough for me. So I have 100% faith and trust in my guys that I would come out of this to the other side, and I did. And it's only going to get better. I mean, for me, personally, yeah, it's going to get better. But what I mean is these procedures seem miraculous. There will be a time, I really believe, in the future where it's going to be commonplace. It's going to be, we hear now about when our friends have to get a new knee replacement or something because they played too much basketball in their youth. And it's almost like we just go, oh, okay, great. Let us know when you're back on your feet. But, with a heart, it still seems pretty miraculous. And there'll be a time it will be as commonplace as replacing anything in your body. It's going to be like putting in a new carburetor into the thing. And that is one reason I'm here is to cheerlead and push for your listeners and your friends of your listeners and your family to be organ donors because it's so friggin' easy. We all know that we can do it, or in most states we can do it when we apply for driver's licenses. But let's say you didn't do that then, and you have a driver's license and it doesn't have that little heart symbol on there. It's so easy to go online and do it in 5 minutes. There's like 4 questions you answer and you're done. And I know people who are hesitant about it, who have excuses. Just the idea of thinking of yourself no longer living it's not an easy thing to really grasp or that you want to grasp. But the fact is you are not going to be living sometime or other. I'm not going to be living. Bob Kincaid will be no longer living. And when we are all no longer living, other people will be and wanting to continue to live. We have to be heroes to those people. There's no reason whatsoever to take your perfectly good expired body and throw it in a hole and cover it up. And I got, I know, I have lots of people I love who are in holes in the ground with their complete bodies. And I got news for you. I rarely visit those people and I love them dearly. But
they live in your heart. They live in your memory. They live in your soul if you buy into.
And I don't want to offend anybody who has specific religious beliefs about this stuff. I get it. If you believe it, you believe it. I'm not going to hate you for it. But there's so many people I think that just either don't get around to it, or I'm going to do it, or I didn't do it when I got my driver's license, so I don't know what to do now, or, oh, it's so icky, they might take out my eyeballs. You're not going to feel a thing, folks. You're going to be dead. And whether you believe in hell or not in heaven or you don't, it doesn't matter. You were you. Everything I've done in 54 years and what I will be doing is me. The body with all the flab and the man boobs, that's a temporary. And in the meantime, you can make some kid. There's little kids out there. There's 7-year-olds that need new hearts. It's all age ranges and all needs. And it's not just hearts. There's livers. There's eyes. And
kidneys.
My mom is still fighting me on this one. Because she's like, oh, I'm too old, and they're not going to want anything with my body. Well, guess what? They'll do experiments on it. They'll show it in classrooms to say this is the aging process. People will learn from it and they will take that knowledge and they will help other people, and you will extend lives. And that's how you're a hero. Every bit as much as taking a rifle in your hand and going out in the battle to save somebody's life. This is a way of doing it without having to fire a shot. All you do is sign a card or click a link, and then when you're gone, and that could be 50 years from now. Or 100 years, whatever. When you're gone, you're still providing life. You're still making another life extend for 50 more years, and we keep passing it on, and that will be the legacy. That will be,
for the I'm forever looking for parallel images, parallel comparisons. And you're a West Virginia boy, so
Yes, I am.
you know what it's like around here, and
Yes, I do.
you know you know the near countless number of yards in this state that have old vehicles on blocks that are being slowly parted out.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I got a distributor cap here. That radiator don't leak, and
Right.
well, it's kind of a similar thing, isn't it?
You just have to get over the ick factor. Everybody gets icked out by the idea of somebody cutting them open and taking out a liver. I mean, there's a really great Monty Python sketch about it. But again, you're not gonna,
Yes, there
what
is.
what do they say when you go to the dentist? You're not going to feel a thing. You won't.
And the dentist is usually lying, but in this case, they aren't.
That's right. You won't feel a thing. And if you believe in heaven, and God bless you for that, because you very well might be right. And when you do go to heaven, if you do, I'm sure that whatever parts you had, if you take your physical form to heaven, you'll have the eyes. You'll still have the eyes. You'll still have the liver, if that's what you believe. That you won't take that with you to heaven.
We ponder from time to time, Dan, those great philosophical questions here.
Oh, I'm a champion navel gazer, as you know.
Right. So over there in the far fringes of the what I refer to as the evangelical religion industry, there are debates about whether or not on that great getting up morning we're going to fly up in the sky to meet Jesus with our clothes on or stark naked.
Yeah, so, I don't want to, because I am cheerleading this cause. And
no. I'm merely pointing out that this is the kind of thing that is real world, and then there's no real, right. There's not a lot of philosophy wrapped up around it. It's simply a matter of doing something decent, and it's the ultimate form of altruism, really, because
sure.
You won't know who you're doing the good for. You will merely know that you are doing good.
That's right. And listen, we all have an impulse.
I was going to say.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. And
no,
this
go
is
ahead.
Your show, but I'm hijacking it. Okay.
Okay, go, man, go.
But I live in New York City, right? I've lived in New York City. I lived there for 12 years before becoming a suburbanite. And whenever I'm in the city and I see a homeless person, I give it whatever I got, a couple of quarters or a dollar bill or something. And for a minute, I think, oh, I'm such a good person. I congratulate myself. We all congratulate ourselves when we do good things, and we keep it in our heads, hopefully, for the most part. But again, this is going to be, you're right, the ultimate form of altruism is once you've done this good deed, you won't hear the congratulations. One thing I am going to do, and this is a part of the process with the donor program, is that anonymity is very, very stressed. I know very little about the donor, and that's on purpose, because what they don't want is the families to be besieged by anybody that wants to get a little, become part of the literal family to them. Or some people want to just keep it hand's length and anonymous, and I respect that. So, but in this case, what I'm encouraged to do, is to reach out to. I can write a letter to thank the donor's family, without knowing who they are, and that I will give that to the third party, sponsored by the transplant program. They will send it along to the donor's family, where I will say, thank you for what your son did. I will never forget it. I will always treasure it. I will pass it on to the next generation in whatever form I can. Your son is a hero. That's what I will do. And if they want to contact me from then on, that's cool with me. If they don't, that's cool with me as well. I understand it. But other than that, you're right. It's the best form of altruism. It's one where you're not waiting around for the applause. You just do it because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. Now, you've talked about the fact that on the donor end, you're not going to feel a thing.
That's right.
The same cannot be said for the recipient end.
That's true. I have right now, the heart that is within me is, I am now, even though I'm in recovery, and I have very strict limitations on what I can do until March. I'm inside a lot. I'm not working right now. But that being said, physically, I am in better condition now than I have been in over a decade. So when I am fully healed from this, it's going to be like I'm ready to bungee jump or something. Maybe I'll go down to that famous gorge and test it out. Although I don't think my cardiologist or wife would be thrilled with that. But
No.
But you're right. I'm only 54, and I love what I do in film and television, and we'll talk some more about that at some point. So, there's only so much medicine here that perhaps your audience can take. Maybe I'll do some nice fluffy showbiz stories at some point. But I love my job, and I have since I started it. And I want to get back to it so bad. And listen, I've got 2 kids in college. I gotta work. I mean, yeah. They're up in Canada, by the way, where tuition is cheaper. That's another tip for your listeners. When you've got college age kids, look at Canada. Look outside of the United States. Just a little word to the wise from one who's here now, because my kids are actually paying about the same tuition to be where they are as they would be going to a state school that's not nearly as good as McGill University. So that's one thing. But anyway, so I've got bills to pay here, and so I want to work, and I love the work itself. So I've got years that I still want to do things. I'm writing a novel right now. I post stuff on Facebook all the time, and I try to do like essays and serious stuff, and not just links to memes and things like that. I try to use it as an extension of the writing. So I've got things I want to do. I've never traveled with my wife anywhere outside of the United States. I want to do that. And again, there's kids who are 20. I've met 22-year-olds who are waiting on hearts, and I know that there are children who are waiting on hearts. They deserve to have decades of their lives. They deserve to fall in love, and they deserve to have jobs that they actually enjoy. They deserve everything.
Let me ask you this about the process, Dan. Was it just? I mean, obviously the matching is a matter of some pretty deep science.
Absolutely.
They've gotten better at it over the years, I understand. But you have to worry about things like rejection. And just so people know, you're how far out now from having had your transplant?
I had the transplant on the 20th of September, and today's November 1st. So that's what, about 5 weeks, I would guess, since the surgery. And you're right. Right now, I am in the process. The big thing about what I'm doing right now with recovery is I have to keep my immunity system deliberately suppressed, because what we don't want to have happen is we don't want my body to confuse my heart with a virus. So I get regular biopsies to get checked on. Are there white blood cells forming around any of the heart tissue? And the answer so far with 6 biopsies is no. I have 0 of that.
So are you taking like a cereal bowl full of medication every day?
Absolutely. Or? It looks like Fruit Brute, and Fruit Brute was the one that was all multicolored and everything. Absolutely. I take 20. Well, right now I'm taking 24 pills just at 9 a.m. And then a total, I think, of 40 to 44 pills throughout the day, a total of that. And a lot of them are about suppressing my immunity system. So I have to watch everything. Purell is my best friend. If I go outside or if I'm around people, I have to wear one of those paper masks over my face. My kids cannot come visit me for Thanksgiving. Well, they just got their flu shots. That was the thing. I said, if you don't get your flu shot, and I know that's a whole separate conversation and potential controversy. I told them, if you don't get your flu shot, you can't come home for Thanksgiving, because I love you, but I can't get sick. A simple flu right now could really do damage to me, could set me back months or even potentially kill me. So especially at the very beginning, when I first came home and people were wanting to come over, wanting to see me, and God bless all of them, I love them, but I had to tell them, you got to stay away for a while. I got to it's not just a matter of me seeking solitude. I can't take any of your germs. And no, that's the thing too. Everybody's like, oh no, I'm fine. But that's always our reaction, right? Whenever we're not feeling well, or at least mine has always been, I'm okay. Don't worry about it. It's like if I fall down and I bust my knee, the first thing out of my mouth is, I'm okay. No, your knee's busted, or no, you're feeling sick. You're not okay. And in my case, I cannot be around not okay people. I have to be around
But
very
obviously,
healthy.
you're still you're still in the home with your lovely wife and everything. What kind of measures has she had to take?
Well, for one thing, she is my advocate and my champion. Whenever we go, we have a lot of doctor's visits still, and she is just very, very wise at paying attention to the details and asking the follow-up questions, and there always are. Take plenty of water with you. Well, how much is plenty? Just simple, stupid question. Or just I just take things at face value, and sometimes she'll even push back a little bit. But beyond that, too, she'll just keep me living clean, literally living sterile, and that I will forget to wash my hands after handling something. Like, you got to wash your hands, or she'll push back on me because I can be a stubborn son of a bitch and just, I got to curse. Oh, don't worry about it. It's like, no, right now you're worrying about it. 6 months down the line, you can be a little more casual. But right now, I have to just go about like I am almost Bubble Boy. So she helps me with that. And when it comes to pills, I take care of my own pills. It's very important for me to feel independent and to feel not like I'm being tended to. And I think that's part of the key too. I've seen a lot of heart patients now who sort of go into do everything for me mommy mode. And I think that's really bad. And depression is a very big deal among post-surgery patients of any type of surgery, including transplant. And you really got to keep your head together. And so Helene is good about that. She calls me on my bullshit, but she also gives me a lot of love and a lot of encouragement. And so do my friends, and even, though only old people are on Facebook, supposedly, Facebook was very important to me those couple weeks where I'm just sitting in a hospital room all day, bored and lonely, and just to have people go, how you doing, and I don't want to sound like I'm plugging for it, but there was a GoFundMe page for me, and people contributed, and it wasn't. It sounds corny as hell, but it wasn't just the money. It's the fact that even if you gave me $10, you didn't have to do that. You did though. You reached in and you just and you gave me $10, and I love that, and just the fact that the gesture was just so wonderful to me. And plus, listen, I was on heavy meds during that time, so I was crying like a baby whenever I'd say, like, somebody gave me $50, they love me, they bought my love. No, that's really cruel for me to say, but I felt like George Bailey at the end of It's a Wonderful Life. Not just the money part, but just like the idea of suddenly you're really aware of how many people are rooting for you and wanting to do things for you. I have a friend that makes us meals and brings them over every Friday night, and we have a whole weekend full of really great stuff, and she happens to be a professional chef for the Food Network. So she does that. We get Food Network quality food every Friday. And that's as great as any gift you could ask for, is for Helene to not have to cook and for us to not have to do so many dishes. And, the other thing, too, that Helene does, by the way, is massive amounts of laundry, just because, again, we have to keep everything clean. Everything has to go through the laundry. I can't wear a pair of jeans 2 days in a row. I can't wear a pair of socks 2 days in a row. They go immediately into the laundry bag because they got germs on them now. And so I'm not used to that. I'm used to being a bit more of a slob. So I know I've just crossed subject matters there, but everything anybody is doing and has done for me is just so overwhelming to me. It still really is. And I could cry right now on the air if I just talked about it enough, because I am sentimental by nature, and I am still on medication. So anything could happen. I don't know how many people cry on your show. I know you're not exactly Barbara Walters, but
it has happened. This is an amazing community because
no doubt.
It transcends the transactional nature of a traditional audience, because we're not out here selling soap or anything. So you'll notice in the course of our conversation, I haven't said, well, we'll be back with more from Dan after this advertisement, right, for buy gold now or any of that crap.
Yeah, no, I listened to honestly, I hadn't been listening to your podcast until you and I talked last week, and it's like, well, I better check this thing out. I better understand the format, and I better see if he sucks, because that would be embarrassing, to just hear my friend flail, But you don't suck, Bob. You're actually really good at this.
Oh, well, thank you very kindly. There's no peer, there's
kind
no
of support I'm talking about. This is the kind of George Bailey stuff I'm talking about here. Just let your friends know every once in a while they don't suck.
Yeah.
You know what? You're perfectly adequate, Bob.
Well, thank you. My old granddad once said to me, he said, "Boy, if you're going to do anything in life, try to be fifth best at it." So that's been a motivation of mine for several years. But I'm simply amazed that you can talk about what you've been through. You're almost chipper, Dan.
Well, I've always been look
Well,
on the bright
you
side.
have. You've always been a happy guy. I mean, that's why we became friends a million years ago in the theater department there at WVU. But I don't know. I feel like I would wake up every morning going, "Holy shit, what the fuck have I been
Well,
through?"
I'll tell you too. I mean, I don't want to go too far deep into the rabbit hole here, but I've had some rough years. My father suffered from depression. I've had issues of depression in my life, and so for as many years as I've been a heart patient, I've been even more years in various forms of psychotherapy. And that's another thing I could recommend wholeheartedly to any of your listeners is if you think you need it, you just might. And I think there's much less of a stigma now than there has been throughout my lifetime. When my dad went through it, it was the 1970s, and he would go to his therapist in secret. He didn't want anybody to know because at that time it was like, well, old Dan's crazy, I guess. And no, he wasn't crazy. He just had something in his bloodstream that every once in a while affected his behavior, and he didn't understand why. And his therapist helped him understand why. In my case, I had some issues, throughout a number of years, and I've worked on those issues with my therapist. And he's still the same guy. I have the same guy for over 10 years, and I know it sounds like a joke from Annie Hall or something, but I still see him. And when I went on the LVAD, which happened, by the way, last year around Christmas time, where I had the heart pump and the batteries and all that stuff, and I had to be around the house all the time. My therapist would come and pay me house calls. Once a week, he would come into this room. He'd sit in this chair I'm sitting in right now in my bedroom, and we would have hour-long sessions in my room. And nobody does that, but my guy did that. But even if you don't have a therapist that does house calls, it just, I recommend it. And in my case, getting back to the chipper side of me, I've put a lot of work and a lot of thought into how I react to things. And, the same shit can happen to me, but the difference between the way I react to it now as opposed to the way I did 10 or 12 years ago is very different. And some of that's also just getting older. I realize that if somebody at work is mad at me, it doesn't mean I necessarily screwed up or that I'm going to get fired. It might be true in both cases. And if that's the case and I do get fired and it's like, okay, well, guess what? It doesn't mean my career is ending. I will get another job. And I have. And so I've realized all of that stuff that I used to turn into these tremendous debacles, they're just things that happen, and you just keep adjusting and you keep moving on. And I have. And I know that, many people have their stories too. But where it goes with me now is that, I accept that, for instance, death is a part of life. And I'm going to try not to get too death-oriented for your show, but it's going to happen. And so there's nothing I can do about it. It's the thing they say, I think, with Alcoholics Anonymous, where they say, help me control the things I can and to accept the things I can't. I've never been to AA, but I've believed some form of that for some time, which is if I can't do anything about it, all I can do is try to control my reaction to it. And in this case, it's like, well, at some point or other, or I could, at Christmas time, I had to come to the realization that I'm going to be undergoing surgery, and it is possible that I might not come out of it. And so in that case, I had to do whatever I could to accept that, at the same time very much not wanting that. And just really thinking about that kind of stuff. And here I am now. I'm not dead. I'm very much alive. I'm talking like crazy here. And So that's good. That's something to celebrate. And every day I'm around, I'm going to sound, whatever about it, but every day I'm around, it's a day more than I could have had, And so when the time comes, it's not going to be like, oh, he died too young or whatever. It's going to be like, no, he got to live this long. He got 54 years. He got 60 years. He got 80 years. However many years I get, it's all gravy. It really is. And, I've had it in some ways in a above average existence in terms of some of the things I've gotten to experience, and some things I haven't done nearly what I had thought I would do with my life. But it's mine, and I'm glad I have it. A lot of people don't. I could be hit by a bus tomorrow. Do we have any listeners left now?
No, this you have to understand that this kind of real conversation is the sort of thing that I've been pursuing for years now with what we're doing here.
Well, I'm a big podcast fan in general, and in all seriousness, I am going to be a regular listener of yours from now on. Shame on me for not for taking so long to get to this point, but you can bet that you're going to be in the phone now with Mark Maron and Gilbert Gottfried.
That's exalted company.
Well, yeah, they might be a little funnier than you because they get paid for that. But
they're a lot funnier than me. I mean, let's be honest here.
You're authentic. You are you, and you're the, what is it? You call yourself the Southern liberal?
I'm actually the only guy who does this. That's a liberal who was born and raised in the South, and is just can't help how damn Southern he is.
You're from Kentucky?
No, I was born and raised in Alabama, but all my people are
Alabama.
but all my people are from here. 9, 10, 11 generations kind of stuff. So it's sort of hard to escape. But you know what? I think I'm gonna have one of my buddies that does voice work or whatever cut a new liner for me, and it's gonna say Bob Kincaid pursuing adequacy for 15 years. I mean, it's kind of got a ring to it, doesn't it, Dan?
I guess so. You might want to test market that one. Go around some shopping malls and see what the folks think. And if you get above a 67% with the 18 to 35s, you got something.
Well, the 18 to 35s that's one of the other things about being our age. We're fast approaching not particularly relevant to the marketing department anymore.
Oh, I've known that for some time because, again, I'm a total movie fanatic, right? So I don't really, I like superheroes and I don't, and I like boy wizards every once in a while. I just don't want every movie to be about a superhero and a boy wizard. Just mix it up a little bit, But that doesn't happen so much anymore. Now pretty much everything is superheroes and wizards. But that's because,
we come from a generation where it was all spaceships and laser beams in space even that, not so much.
Before that, I mean, I actually, come from the, my first movie-going experiences were things like Cuckoo's Nest and Paper Moon and The Sting and even Rocky, which was a feel-good audience movie, still had a lot of dark elements to it. Saturday Night Fever, too. If you watch that movie, it's like, holy cow, there's a lot of darkness in it. It isn't all just sexy disco dancing.
Well, no, I mean, even I think we did it. I think we did a breakdown one time on the program of the lyrics to Stayin' Alive.
Oh, yeah.
That's a creepy song.
It's downbeat as hell. But it's got a good beat, and you can dance to it.
See, I've been told from time to time that I have this fantastic memory. And I remember being in
Who told it to you? Do you remember who told that to you?
Can't at all. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Actually, it was our mutual buddy, Mick. But we were in the car one day, and you remember the movie theater that used to be out in Star City in the shopping?
Oh, yeah.
Double feature. And you were in the truck, and maybe it was Mick with it. It was before the age of extended cabs,
right?
And something had happened to the billboard for where you put on the letters to
the marquee.
That's the word. Only it wasn't over the theater; it was out in the parking lot. And for the longest, for about 10 minutes, we were all scratching our heads because we couldn't figure out why an Italian art house film would be playing at a movie theater in Star City, West Virginia, in a college town. Because
Are you talking about Unco Mon Valor?
Yes.
Unco Mon Valor, starring Gene Hackman.
Yes.
Also known to American audiences, Uncommon Valor.
Yeah. You know.
Now, my favorite one, I'm surprised you don't remember this one. At that very same marquee, they had two movies playing. It was a two-movie theater, which was popular at the time. And the one theater was showing Gandhi. And the other movie was showing was The Last American Virgin, which was part of that post-Porky's teen sex comedy craze, right?
Right.
And the tagline to that movie, The Last American Virgin, was "See it or be it." But in order to put that out, it had to go beneath the entire marquee. So when you first came upon it, it looked like Gandhi, "See it or be it," which kind of makes sense too. Are you really going to pass this revolution, or are you just going to watch the movie and go home and feel good about yourself and then be an asshole?
Jesus.
So,
yeah. And
so, yeah.
Do you notice how we're seemingly transitioning into show business here?
What's that? Say that again.
Do you see how we're seamlessly transitioning into show business
Yeah, I
here?
got tired of talking about death and myself and hearts and everything. I mean, I think your viewers, I think your listeners got the point. Hopefully they're gonna, if they haven't thought about it already, they'll donate a heart or a kidney or a lung. Please, why not?
Get on the list.
Yeah, but meanwhile, let's talk show business. Yeah.
And as I have hinted, I went on to be an English major. And you stuck around in the theater program there at WVU.
Right.
You started out acting and then moved toward writing. And right after I graduated in the summer of '85, they finally insisted it was time for me to leave. And
you graduated before me. Oh,
yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I've got a year on you.
Yeah.
But in a classic example of my lousy sense of timing, a movie started filming in southern West Virginia the following year,
right.
And they kind of recruited out of the WVU theater department, didn't they? Or they put up a call or something?
It's actually from Theater West Virginia, which, because I had just graduated with a degree in theater in '86. And, I had been studying acting, but by the time I was a senior, in my senior year, I realized I didn't want to be an actor. But that meant I had a year left to go to just get a diploma, and then no real direction of what I was going to do from there. I was writing plays and directing some at WVU, and those were getting me more praise than the acting. So when you're that young, you go where the praise takes you. If somebody says you're good at basketball, suddenly you're thinking maybe the NBA isn't out of your reach, right? So in my case, I thought, well, maybe I'll be a writer, but I don't know how I'm going to do any of this. But I do know I'm going to get a diploma, and I know I'm not going back home to my little hometown in Middleburn, West Virginia, with 800 people. So I got to do something. And so I was doing theater in Beckley, Theater West Virginia, the Hatfields and McCoys, and Honey and the Rock. Now, were you part of that? Were you in these shows?
I never did that. No.
Oh, you would have been a natural. You would have been perfect for that.
Can't carry a tune in a bucket.
Yeah, but there were some. I have heard you sing. This is true, folks. Don't.
They have too. It's a major fundraising pitch around here. Contribute or I sing.
Oh God. But anyway, so to get to the essence of the story, I was just doing tech theater. I was just doing the backstage stuff, and there was word going around that there was a movie company coming to town, that they're going to make a movie in Beckley, West Virginia at the end of the summer of 1986. Now, if you saw this in a movie, folks, if there were ever, and there won't be, but if there were ever the Dan Fisher story made into a movie, and you saw this scene where Dan Fisher, played by some, I don't know, but he happens to be in the one town in West Virginia where they're bringing a movie, where he happens to have no other idea what he's going to do with his future. And oh, by the way, I don't know if they've ever made a whole lot of movies in West Virginia since that point. I know they made a few little tiny ones, but this was not a tiny one, and it actually got to movie theaters and got nominated for an Academy Award. And the movie was called Mate One, and it was directed and written by a guy named John Sayles, who's an independent filmmaker. He He writes screenplays. He takes the money he makes from that, and he puts them into his own movies that he really wants to do. So this was a movie about the Matewan massacre, which happened in it's been years since I've worked on it. 1919, I think, where the unions were forming all over West Virginia, coal mining unions, and the coal companies were trying their best to make that not happen. And one of the ways they would do it is they would bring hired detectives with guns down to any town where there was rumor of unions starting up. And if they had to, they were given permission to shoot rebels, a.k.a. people trying to form a union. And so this happened in the town of Matewan. And again, it's been a while, folks, since I've either seen it or read the screenplay or done any research. So one of your listeners maybe can tell me. But there were many, many bloody bodies on the streets of Matewan, West Virginia, in real life. This happened in your state. And when I studied West Virginia history, which I did not get a golden horseshoe for, when I was in 8th grade, we knew none of that. We were taught none of
taught.
It was not taught that there was any labor strife in West Virginia. All we were taught is things about the state bird and the rhododendron and, all this stuff. And we thought Take Me Home Country Roads was the state song. We didn't know any different. But anyway, this true story was made into a movie that starred Chris Cooper, James Earl Jones, David Strathairn, lots of people who were either famous at the time or would become very famous. Chris Cooper won an Academy Award. And like I said, our movie, Matewan, got nominated for Best Cinematography. A legendary director named Haskell Wexler, who had won 2 Oscars, was the director of photography. So I got hired on this because I actually showed up. When we were finishing up the season with Theater West Virginia, I can't tell you how many people who were actors in that company, and even some of the tech people were like, oh, I'm going down there and I'm going to get a job. And all the actors were like squabbling about, oh, how big a part do you think I should, deign to accept, and at the end of the day, it was me and one other guy from Theater West Virginia who actually showed up to interview. He got cast as a background extra, and I got cast as in something called the art department. And I didn't even know what that meant. I thought it meant I would have to paint all the time. But what it really meant is, okay, we have to move that pile of coal from here to there. And I did that. And it's like, okay, we need to put up curtains today. I put up curtains. I had no skills in any of this. I just kept saying yes and how. And people respect it when you say how. If you volunteer to do a job, but you also at the same time admit you don't quite know how to do it, could you just show me a second? Most people will respect that and take a moment to show you. And then once you learn it, you pay attention, then you can do that skill. And then you've got a skill, and people will pay money to people with skills. Anyway, so I did that movie, and I started out offset, but then at one point, one of the onset guys quit. And so they needed an onset person. And they're like, do you want to be on set? I'm like, hell yeah. I knew who Haskell Wexler was. I had seen Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and I had seen Bound for Glory, and I'd seen all these movies he had done with Hal Ashby. And I knew James Earl Jones, of course, and I knew John Sayles. I'd seen Brother from Another Planet and Baby It's You. So, of course, I wanted to be among those people, and those were my people. And when the movie was done, I knew I'm going to New York because that's where all the crew was, and that's where John was based out of. And I did 2 more John Sayles movies in addition to a lot of, everything. I did MTV. I did softcore porn. If you offer, I did toy commercials, whatever. Anybody that wanted to hire me, and it's like if I got a call that said we're going to make a movie in Louisiana, I'll be down in Louisiana tomorrow. I'll be in Cincinnati. Where do you want me? How much you paying me? And you didn't have to pay me much in those days because all I ate was macaroni and cheese and I drank beer. And I went to movies 5 or 6 times a week. So I could cover those costs with what I was making as a low-level guy. But you keep doing it and you don't quit. And the next thing you know, you're not a low-level guy. You're a mid-level guy and, whatever else you can call me.
The niche that you sort of fit into then is essentially properties?
Properties, which is the difference is there's two aspects to props in a way. There's something called props, right, which is usually on camera stuff, the things, a gun, a car, food, anything. Whereas there's also something called set dressing, which is the elements of a set. So the curtains, a bed, pillows, a cabinet,
books on a bookshelf.
Books on a bookshelf, the paintings on a wall, posters, a mirror, all of that is set dressing. It doesn't move in the scene. If it moves, if an actor picks it up, it's prop. If it just stays there, but it's part of the frame, then that's set dressing. And I've done both, although principally I just like being on a set. I'll do whatever. You pay me, I'm yours. But I prefer it if I can be on set because I like dealing with actors, and I think that my acting background has helped with that. That I know how to talk. I know how to talk actors, and even within the scope of props, when I've met with actors, like Kevin Kline, I worked with on a little movie called The Extra Man, and he really, I think, appreciated it that when I would offer ideas for things for him, because he was part of the prep process. Unlike a lot of actors, Kevin would come to the production office every day during prep. Prep is like the 5 or 6 weeks before you actually shoot, where you're just getting all the stuff and you're testing all the stuff and you're seeing what the director likes and doesn't like. And Kevin would come in during prep, which actors never do. And he would go through props with me, and he'd like, I have an idea. And I'd say, well, I have an idea too. And he would listen. And together, he and I would go to the director and say, we have an idea. This is extraordinarily generous. You wish every
that's
actor.
kind of a beautiful process.
Yeah. And even, I've worked with some actors who weren't so pleasant, but the fact that I understand to some degree acting and that props can help you act. Props, we were always taught that in acting class, that if you didn't know what to do with your hands, pick up something, or if you don't know where to move.
Damn it, I missed that class.
Go to a place in the room and your character wants something, like an apple, and eat the apple, or pick up a toy and play with the toy. It's not something you can do all the time because then it just becomes craziness. But for beginning acting, that's not a bad suggestion to at least, what do I do with my hands? Well, put a sandwich in it. Get a cigar, do something with it. Don't just stand there and stick them in your pockets. But anyway, props motivate, props also define. The script might say the man comes in with a gun. Well, there's a big difference between if that gun is a little .22 that fits in his boot, or is a Clint Eastwood, Magnum Special. Does the gun have a silencer? Does the gun, is it silver? If I'm doing night scenes, I often try to encourage the director to think about having a silver gun, a chrome gun, chrome plated, as opposed to the standard black, because hey, it's going to be nighttime and your lights are going to be low. Do you want that to really show? So just there's the objects we own define us as people. You go into anybody's house, there's set dressing right there. If I've got the dogs playing poker art on my wall, that says something about me. If I've got an original Rembrandt, that says a whole different thing about me. If I eat macaroni and cheese for dinner or a bowl of cereal versus a 4-course meal, then that tells you something about who I am and certainly my socioeconomic status. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm up to my ears in debt. Or maybe I just like cereal. You certainly wouldn't have known Howard Hughes was what he was by his habits.
Not by any stretch of the imagination. Let me ask you this. In terms of historicity, you mentioned working on the Americans. That meant that you had to find, I presume that you had to go out and find things that were historically accurate within the purview of the mid to late 80s.
Absolutely. And we were very, coming from the very top, it has to be 100% period accurate. And each year the show was a different year. Each year progressed because, the talent, the actors, the kids, get a year older. So it can't just be quote unquote the 80s. Like there are some sitcoms or even some movies, and I won't name them, but they do the 80s, where it's like every scene has somebody playing with a Rubik's Cube or making a Pac-Man reference or wearing, a headband. And it's like, well, that's the 80s, but what year? For the Americans, it's like, okay, this is 1985, period. So if something came out in 86, we're not going to use it, no matter how terrific it is, how appropriate it might seem for the scene. It's not 85. It didn't exist. So we have to honor that. And so, there's a lot of research that's involved, and that's fun. I've learned to embrace research over the years.
And there are a lot of nerds out there who will pick you to pieces over that stuff.
Sure, and you know what? Every once in a while they've been right. I've been caught on some things, not on the Americans, and not even necessarily with period inaccuracy. I've been caught on continuity things, like, oh, the pencil was in his, it's like, what are you gonna, I've got actors, I've got, we're under deadline, it's 3 a.m, we're gonna make the occasional mistake on camera, and yeah, and I guess we deserve to be pilloried for that because we're paid money to not make mistakes. But in terms of period accuracy, there really is no excuse for making mistakes. We have the internet, and it makes things so much easier and so more interesting to research, and not just Googling, but I have found over the years that YouTube is a fantastic resource for research, and something I think is underused for those who want to learn more about a specific period. An example was, I did a movie a long time ago, not good movie. There's a scene where two characters are smoking crack, and the director wanted it to be on camera. So we see them lighting up, and we see the smoke, and we see them inhale. Now, obviously, I'm not going to give them real crack. So the question became, is there such a thing as fake crack that's manufactured? And at that time, the answer was no. Maybe now there is. I know there's fake marijuana that looks and smokes like the real thing, but is not marijuana. But at that time, there was not real fake crack. So I went on to YouTube and I put in how to make fake crack cocaine. I got 6 different videos telling me how to make fake crack cocaine. And I watched them all and I chose the best one, and it worked like a charm. And I learned something else interesting as a side note, which is why were there 6 different videos about making fake crack cocaine? Like, are there that many movies where they need that as a prop? The answer is no. The reason why people wanted to make fake crack cocaine was because dealers make fake crack cocaine. Why? Because they can make a lot of money by selling fake crack cocaine. Who is buying this stuff? The answer is people who have never done it before and are obviously easy marks. A college kid who's gone into the wrong part of town to buy crack and try it for the first time. The dealer sells him the fake stuff, which costs nothing to him, and he makes a lot of money. And he knows that kid's not coming back to get his money back. That kid knows he's been ripped off, and he's going to accept that. So that just,
capitalism.
You just go down, just all these great rabbit holes. And I just have to plug myself again in that a long time ago, back in 1986 or 7, I worked on a movie called Mississippi Burning. And it was about the civil rights movement, and a specific case that happened during the civil rights movement where 3 civil rights workers were murdered, Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. And this is a fictionalized version, and there was a lot of controversy about whether the movie should even have been made. But that being the case, I was part of that making of the movie. And I was originally hired to do 2 weeks of research to try to find as many photos and as much information as I could that would relate to anything in the script that we could find. Just basically, and at that time, there was no Google in 87. There was no internet. What I did living in New York City was there were a number of photo libraries all around town, with the New York Public Library and some of the civil rights history organizations. And I hit all of them big time. I made out subway maps. I figured out how to get the most out of my time. And I came back and created huge folders of visual reference for that time period. Everything from the specific case itself, what their cars look, those guys, what the car looked like that Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman were riding in when they were killed, all the way down to what color was the bus that brought the sailors down to look for bodies. I did all this research just by going to photo libraries, picking up the phone and calling people. I called the Pentagon one day and spent a day going from department to department with the Pentagon, the U.S. Navy, to find out that answer to the question, what color were the buses? I got a paint chip, an original paint chip from one of those buses that went down there and brought the Naval Reserve men who found the bodies in the earthen dam in Mississippi. And, it was hard, good, fun, interesting, rewarding work. It would be a lot easier now. I might not get the paint chip, but I'd find out a lot of stuff and have Google Image and YouTube videos, all of this stuff to provide all of this visual information. And that was that's a fun part of the stuff. And the same with the Americans. I mean, I lived through the 80s. You and I were together, living through the 80s.
Right.
And, drinking the occasional beer and listening to Pink Floyd and so forth.
And the Pretenders.
And the Pretenders, of course. But I remember the 80s, enough that yeah, that's a starting point for me. And how long can I just keep talking?
You know what? We're doing fine. I mean, although I pick little things out here and there. That's our second Gene Hackman reference.
Okay. Well, Gene Hackman is a great actor.
Yeah. I just wondered if maybe you ever got a chance to walk up to him on the Mississippi Burning set and say, "I loved you in Uncle Mon Valor."
No, he would have kicked my ass. Gene is a tough customer, and on a set, you don't talk to Gene. You let Gene be. In fact, Gene was known more than once to have the assistant directors escort various background extras off the set if they got a little too close and chummy for him.
I've got something here you might get a kick out of, since we started out talking about Mate One, and people around here, people in this community know the film because
Good.
I quote from it constantly. It's practically a byword of this program that all we got in common is our misery, and the least we can do is share it.
That's right. That movie in particular should be in every public library in the state of West Virginia. It should be in every school, and it's a fictionalized version, but you know what? It tells the basic story in a truthful way, and certainly captures, I believe, the spirit of the labor movement, not only in West Virginia but all over the land, but specifically.
And for me, it was a beautiful entree into that history, because you go from there to the murder of Sid Hatfield,
right.
David Strathairn's character in Mate One, was a real human being, and he really did get gunned down by Baldwin gun thugs on the steps of the McDowell County Courthouse.
And he had been a Civil War hero, Sid Hatfield. He had, for the Union, he had done tremendously brave and heroic things. I can't tell you specifically, but I do know this. I know he was awarded many things. He was an incredible, wonderful person.
And the
Smiling Sid, they called him Smiling Sid Hatfield.
Yeah, and the guy who ratted the miners out, C.E. Lively.
C.E. Lively was a real person.
A real person, and wound up, I think, in Atlanta, if I recall correctly. But then that's an entree into learning about the Armed March on Logan, in which for the first...
You tell me.
Well, it's 1921. Everything that happened in Mate One has come to a head. The Logan County is a closed system. It's a hillbilly North Korea run by a vicious anti-union sheriff who was known for extrajudicially murdering union organizers, and the UMWA said they were going to shut it down. And so miners who were fresh out of the trenches of France banded together, and were marching on Logan, and it winds up at a battle. In literally a pitched battle in a place called Blair Mountain, West Virginia, which the Battle of Blair Mountain, which and incidentally, the coal companies have gone hammer and tongs trying to blow that mountain up just to make the history of it go away. And it was a young Army Air Corps officer named Billy Mitchell said, "I got this great idea. What do you say we drop bombs on them from airplanes, those miners?"
Oh, my God.
And it's the largest militarized uprising in the history of the United States post the Civil War. And it's also a cautionary tale about taking up arms against people who have a lot more than you do.
How does that particular episode end? More dead miners?
There were not a lot more, but dead miners. The union movement gets squashed like a bug because they did resort to violence. There were treason trials, and the union, the UMWA, is deader than Pharaoh's house cat until FDR comes along and gets a Democratic Congress, and they pass the National Labor Relations Act.
You see, this if this were made into a movie, the Battle of Logan you're talking about, I mean, in a way, it sounds almost kind of like The Empire Strikes Back to Matewan's Star Wars. It's like the saga continues.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
unfortunately, when it comes to this situation with the labor movement in West Virginia specifically, just like the Star Wars movies, these things, this struggle just does not seem to end. It just keeps going on, and here we are. It's 2018, and it's still going on. And here I'll get a little lefty for your audience. You know, I'm the son. I'm a union member. I'm in.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, I'm in IATSE Local 52, which represents in the New York area prop people, set dressers, but also grips, electrics. I'm going to forget people. I'm going to feel carpenters, and you know, and we work with people in other locals on our set, including costumes and wardrobe and hair and makeup and so forth, and camera operators and cameramen and camera persons. I'm so sorry, camera persons. So you know, I'm a proud member of a union. I've been in it since '94, but I'm also the son of a union member. My dad worked in a chemical plant called Mobay near New Martinsville, West Virginia, and he was a member of the International Chemical Workers Union. And if it weren't for my dad lucking into that job, which then puts you into the ICWU, I mean, my dad was a barber and worked part-time on the barges with my grandpa when he was in his young 20s and had 3 children. And somehow, you know, and we lived pretty poor. And so him getting that job and us moving to West Virginia from Pittsburgh, which is where I was originally born, I mean, that saved my life. That certainly changed my life. I would have grown up poor. Instead, I got to grow up reasonably middle class, working class. You know, we did go on a vacation once a year to Myrtle Beach, like a lot of West Virginians do. You know, I was able to, you know, we were able to afford basic things. We had a house, we had a car. You know, these are things that you shouldn't have to beg for if you work, you know, 5 days a week. And in his case, he did more than 40 hours a week. Whenever they asked for somebody to do double time or time and a half, do an extra shift because somebody didn't show up, he'd do it. You know, because he was still young enough in the business, he figured he should just say yes to everything. But, you know, the union protected him in terms of he could get time and a half and double for working an extra shift. And there were safety precautions put into place that had to be adhered to. And that's the case with my business, too. You know, there are certain things that, you know, producers cannot ask us to do because it's not physically safe. And we have the right to say no and contact our union and say they're trying to make us do this. We feel it's unsafe, and the union ideally will back us up. And that's as important as the money, folks. Because if you get injured or if you're you know anything else, you're no longer useful to production. You know, I'm a freelance craftsman. I have no one job. When the Americans was done, it finished up. You know, that's it for me for that job. I've got to look for another one eventually. And that's been the case for 32 years. So if I get injured, or in my case right now, right, I've got the heart stuff, so I'm not working. But if I were, let's say, injured on the job, I get workman's comp. It's not that much money. But I'm not useful to them as long as I've got a broken leg or a concussion. And so they're going to hire somebody else. So in a way, you know, whether it's the supposedly glamorous world of show business or whether you're mining coal or working in a factory, it's still the same. You're a tool to people. That tool is used to create a product which makes you some money and other people a lot of money. Show business is a business. We're creating a product that goes out all over the world. In fact, we make far more money now. By we, I mean the studios and the producers and the actors make far more money now because of international sales and box office than domestic in the United States, you know. And so because of that, it's $1 billion industry. And we in my union can't afford to give up anything. You know, we should ideally be part of that system of like, look, you're making billions more than you ever used to, and it's only expanding with Amazon and Netflix and so forth. We should have a piece of that pie too. And it's like, well, maybe not, you know, or at least that's what's presented to us. Maybe you should just be happy with what
there really is with the expansion of the industry through things like Amazon, Netflix. There's been a flourishing.
Yeah, it's flourishing. Apple's going to have its own channel. I was working on a show that's going to premiere on the new Apple TV network, coming soon on a streaming platform. Disney is starting their own streaming platform. So yeah, it's just more and more and more entertainment that, it's a product that people want and demand. As long as there's demand, the product will be created. That's good news for my industry in that, really for the past 10 years, I've not lacked for work. I could quit a job today and have a different job tomorrow. It's that busy. In fact, we're like begging for people. We're hiring people we don't want on our crews just because we've got to fill the crews. We've got to keep making the sausage here in the sausage factory.
Well, let me take you back, because you were talking about how important the union is to you.
Yes.
Is your health care through the union?
Absolutely. Yes, and shame on me for not really mentioning that.
So no union health care, no heart transplant for Dan.
Well, yeah, probably, and certainly, we to go back to that very beginning stuff that we were talking with the heart transplant, my experience with it. The fact is this, and I'm extraordinarily lucky in a lot of ways. I live a half an hour drive from New York Presbyterian Hospital, which is one of the great heart centers in the world, with doctors who are world renowned. But I also, through being in the union I have Oxford Healthcare. Freedom Plan, which provides for me pretty much everything I need. So I have this world-class care, and I don't have to worry about paying anything other than copays. And that's such a gift. That's, and thank God I got through all this stuff before the pre-existing conditions go away, if God forbid they do. I've been so lucky. But yes, union membership, I've got a 401k. That and an annuity plan and a pension plan that someday or other will come my way, and that's going to help out a lot. My grandparents on my mother's side, my grandpa was tricked by J&L Steel into retiring early. He was in his 50s when he retired, and he was given a pittance of a goodbye package, and he spent the rest of his life. They held on. They weren't, but they were basically poor. They lived very tightly off of Social Security and a very limited savings plan. And so, I don't want to be that guy. And he wasn't represented by me. He got nothing, when he left, except pretty much a gold watch, sort of package. I don't know if he even got that. So I am lucky, and it's I don't know if you remember this, but I was thinking about it recently. In the 80s, one thing I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, there was all that stuff about the Japanese were going to take over the steel industry, right?
And there was a Tom Cruise film set in Western Pennsylvania, wasn't there?
Well, that was the one about football. That was
yeah.
But there was a Michael Douglas movie called something Black Rain.
Yes.
That basically was all about how the Japanese were all a bunch of villains who were going to take over America, sort of thing. But besides that aspect, there was also, I remember, a philosophy going around, even in my hometown, which had a lot of people working in the factories, of, well, the unions were good for their time, but they went too far.
Oh God, I've heard that a million times.
Well, it started in the 80s, and I've really come to the conclusion that this is all part of the long-range plan. I think that it was like pre-Fox and pre-internet. Let's start this campaign. Let's get people saying things enough that it becomes the truth. That, there's always that guy asleep in the corner and he's making double time. And, there's always the uncle. Listen, and, has there been corruption in the history of American unionism? Yeah, plenty of it, sure. But on the other hand, one bad apple don't spoil the whole bunch, girl. To quote the Osmond family. For every case of that, there's thousands of cases of my own family and families around me in Middleburn and New Martinsville, Sistersville, down Parkersburg, Charleston, Beckley, of unions made the difference. Unions meant the difference between you being poor and you having a comfortable working class life where at the very least you got a car, a house, and a week in Myrtle Beach if you were lucky. If you didn't get laid off, if your plant didn't go on strike, you could have these things. Your kids could go to college. Those should not be. That's the very basic of American dreams to me. I mean, it's stuff we were all told that we could have someday. just those real basic things. A week at a beach, or a couple days at one of the many fine state parks of West Virginia, whatever it is, and a house. It could be a small house, but it's yours. It could be a shitty car, but you own it, or you can afford to make the payments on it. These are things that we should not have to beg for. We should not have to beg to have a doctor see us and then not bankrupt us. Those are basic things. We're putting in 40-hour week is something that probably hasn't happened since the 80s. We're all expected to work more than 40 hours now. Unless it's the opposite. You're told to work 39 because they don't want to put you under certain things.
Or you can't get more than 20. And that's the reality now in West Virginia, Dan. I don't know how long it's been since you've been back.
It's been a while.
But the reality here is that, and this started when the Affordable Care Act went into law, and corporate America threw a fit and said, well, if we have to offer insurance to our full-time employees, we just won't have full-time employees. Nah. Right.
Yeah, so the 20-hour work week or even the 39, so you don't get benefits, all of that. By the way, I'm moving because I'm starting to run out of batteries here. Okay.
Oh golly! Well, I hate that's the.
Oh, not me. The laptop. I'm not running out of juice. I'm still alive, folks.
Oh, okay.
Don't send me in your new hearts. I don't need it. I got one to sign.
Well, listen. You know what? I had a feeling this might happen, Dan. I had a feeling that perhaps this conversation might take on a life of its own. You and I have always been able to pass many a happy hour gabbing back and forth.
Well, you and I are at least happy. I hope others are.
Oh no, others are. Others are. I can tell you based on the email I've gotten. Jack down in Shreveport took your observation and said and provided a whole new slogan for the program.
Which is what?
Bob Kincaid, no ads, just adequate. And also asked along the way, Jack did, the detail, basically a question about, the detail orientation. You have to be really, really detail oriented in order to do the work that you do.
Yeah, that's true.
And how that expands and extends, not just within the world of set dressing and props, but to, whether or not somebody has a bead of sweat on their forehead or things, hairs out of place, continuity issues. And I mean, that falls under continuity, right?
Yeah, hair out of place, things like that. Yeah, all of it counts because, once it's there, it's there for good. And you can't go back and never mind it. We used to say back when there was film, there was a saying that I think Godard said that film was 24 frames of truth per second. Now in the age of video, that's an anachronistic saying. But the basic meaning of it is true, that, yeah, everything that you see, I can't say it's all planned because every director works very differently. There are some that do the Kubrick thing of trying to control every element. There are others, like I worked with David O. Russell, who thrives on creating a chaotic atmosphere on set and then letting it go and seeing what happens and letting his actors improvise and, coming up with last-minute prop ideas that would drive me crazy, but that would work. So getting back to our friend, what is it, Jack in Shreveport?
Yes.
Is that it's a certain balance of planning and not planning. And the truth is, too, in terms of the detail, and again, it depends on how the director films it. Some directors will go onto close-ups of objects or close-ups on faces that you see the beads of sweat. Other times we put that level of detail in and you never see it. The director chooses to shoot the entire scene in a long shot or a fast-moving dolly where you can't tell the beads of sweat from anything else or the fact that I chose this over that. But where it is important, though, and this goes back to the acting days for me, is that whether or not the camera will notice these things, it matters because it matters to the actors. We're trying to create we're trying to help them overcome the idea that all of this is phony baloney. right? They know it's not 1985. They know it's not Russia or Washington, D.C. They know it's a soundstage. And they're trained actors. And Matthew Rhys just won the Emmy for Best Actor for the Americans. But at the same time, if I can put a cereal box that's period correct, it's just even on a shelf. And who knows if the camera sees it, but if he sees it, just those little things are saying, you know what, this is your world, buddy. And if we make sure that the set decorator makes sure that the pattern of the carpeting is right, or the costumes just come up with something that's really cool and just really sells it to anybody. That just helps tell the story. It's like whether you choose to use an adjective or an adverb in a sentence as a writer. Everything you do or do not include makes a difference. Sometimes it's better not to throw in a lot of adjectives. Sometimes it's better just to keep it all very simple. But on the other hand, for actors and directors and producers too, it's a good way if I put in enough detail, if I ask enough of the right questions, it's showing them that I really care. I really give a shit about not just what I'm doing, but what they're doing. And I'm going to try to support them any way I can to make it believable to them. Because if they can believe it, I can believe it as a viewer. It's what did George Costanza say? It's not a lie if you believe it. That kind of explains acting, really.
And the Trump administration.
We believe it. And the Trump administration, right. It's not a lie if you believe it.
Alternate facts, sure. We'll wrap this up, and hopefully maybe you'll come back and we'll delve into this more.
Hell yeah.
But I got one question before we go.
I got time.
Right. Yeah, till March, right?
Till March.
So, are automobiles are they sui generis? Are finding cars for movies and TV shows? Is that separate from what you do? Or you were talking about researching the buses and whatnot.
That's a that depends answer, because some of that depends on where you are doing the shooting. In Los Angeles, picture cars is an entirely different department. I believe they're actually under the aegis of the Teamsters, not of IATSE. In New York, it's props. It's always props. We fight like hell to keep it props, because the more tasks we have to do, the more guys we get to hire, or the more people we get to hire. And in the case too with cars, yeah, it's my job. It can be a pain in the ass, but the one thing we do is that there are companies in the New York City area and other areas where the production, I'm sure down in Atlanta too, for example, where that's all they do is they have entire lots full of cars of all periods, and police cars and ambulances and so forth, and they'll rent them out. So I can call Picture Cars East, or I can call one of the other places in town, and just say, or I can email them, this is a list of what I'm going to need for the next episode. And then they start sending me pictures. What about this? What about that? For the Americans, we had scenes that take place in downtown Moscow, 1984, 1985. So there's the double thing of I've got to find cars that are appropriate for Russia, for downtown Moscow, but they've got to be period appropriate.
And being Russian cars, they also have to run.
They have to run. Well, but this is what you learn, and it's certainly in an area as vast and populated as New York City, is that every car ever made has a fanatic about it. There are car clubs that just, that are devoted to 1970s Volkswagens. And when I talk fanatics, I'm not talking about a guy that's got his car out on the blocks behind his house. He's got it in immaculate condition. And I say he, I don't mean to be sexist, and I keep lapsing into sexism during this, but it is a male-dominated world, certainly not exclusive, but I'd say 95% of the car fanatics I meet are these guys that treat their cars better than they treat their own children, and polished to it, and to perfection, and everything about it is accurate, and even what's under the hood, what you want to see, the original parts, and everything is clean and well tended. And I rent those from people, and in the case of Russian cars, yeah, there are Russian car societies. That they get together, they have meetings, they talk about whose Volga is the best, or where can I find parts for a Lada. or a type of Mercedes that was only distributed in Eastern Europe in the 80s. So these are the people that I deal with, and then I have to negotiate with them. And of course, my producers are like, we don't have any money. We want to, can we get them cheap? And then I have to go to them and say, how low can we go here? So there's a lot of negotiation. There's a lot of schmoozing. There's a lot of ass kissing I have to do. Oh my God, that's a great car. And it is a great car. But at the same time, I have to let them know that they're appreciated and that it'd be really doing me a huge favor. Instead of the 1,000 a day they're asking for, how about 400 a day? Can you live with that? I'll try to get you back on for another 400, and so forth. And that's how we make Moscow, is through a lot of phone calls, a lot of hours spent negotiating.
And Moscow was Brooklyn. Moscow
was Brooklyn. Sometimes I remember one day we did we were in Staten Island anyway for something else. So it's like, okay, well, there's a street down here where we can kick off a Moscow shot. We can knock something off the schedule if we turn this one block into Moscow for this one scene. So I remember that too. I've done movies where we've had I did a movie called about J.D. Salinger called Rebel in the Rye, where we went to Staten Island to film World War II battle scenes, and we had tanks, World War II era tanks that we brought out to this. I forget what it was. It was like an old hospital that had been turned into some sort of museum or something like that. And they had a big field, and we just used the field. We turned that into trenches, and we did World War II stuff, and we made sure not to point the camera in the wrong direction because there you'd see buildings and modern airplanes and modern cars all over the place. So
magic, pure magic.
It's kind of more, it's magic in the sense that a magician in Las Vegas is doing magic. It's all fake. It's all about where you make
illusion.
You make the eye go to this hand so that you're not looking at that hand. Because if you look at that other hand, you see how simple it is and how obvious it is. Yet you never think about it because you're not looking there. You're looking where the director or the writer wants you to look, and that is the magic, really. It's just all about what we choose to put in front of the camera and where we point the camera. And if the actors do their job, let me just say one more thing. I'm like Columbo. One more thing.
One more thing, sorry.
One more thing. You brought up continuity a while ago, and yeah, people love to harp on that because every one of us can spot something, right? Oh, he was driving a blue car in that scene. Now it's green. What happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened is that the guy who originally was renting the blue car to the production decided he wanted too much money, and the producers thought they could get away with it. Or maybe the car broke down in the middle of the night, and they couldn't get it fixed. And it's like, okay, well, we're just going to have to go with the green, and we'll try to fix it in post. And they didn't fix it in post, or not well enough. But here's the thing. My favorite example of bad continuity, but who gives a shit? Wizard of Oz. One of the most beloved movies of all. Sometimes the Tin Man has an X. Sometimes he doesn't have an X.
Yeah, exactly.
Dorothy's hair. Check out her hair. It goes up. It goes down. It's in pigtails. It's in braids. Who cares? It's the Wizard of Oz. You're so enraptured into this world. Who cares? If you really are paying that much attention to the fact that the truck was facing one direction and now it's facing another, or it's the milk was half full, that means it's a lousy movie. You're not paying attention to the story. You're looking at the milk.
Or maybe you're missing the point in the first place.
Or maybe the filmmakers did a lousy job and no amount of continuity could have fixed it. It would be slightly better and it wouldn't be discontinuous, but it'd still be a story that nobody cares about, performed by actors who aren't capable of giving you the performance that was needed. Whatever the reason, whose ever fault it is, it didn't work.
And you don't make any bones about the fact that you've worked on some dogs.
Oh, sure. Because I'm not what they call an above the line, or I'm not an actor or a star. I don't have an agent. You catch me at the right time, I'll say yes. I did a tiny budget movie that just came out this year and is now on video called 8th Grade. And I'll take this moment to plug it. It's a terrific movie about a girl who's in 8th grade who's going into high school, and she's just awkward as hell, and she just doesn't fit in. And unlike a lot of these kind of movies, she wants to fit in. Like I see a lot of movies now about teenagers who are misfits, and and I won't name names, but Lady Bird, where they're kind of, it's kind of nihilistic. It's kind of like, I don't want to fit in. I'm cool, and it's like, well, no, because when you are a misfit, whatever, we're all misfits at some point in our lives. And very few of us go, well, I'm too cool. I don't care. All of us want to fit in. And what 8th grade does is it really captures that feeling of somebody that would just love to be one of the popular kids, would love to get invited to birthday parties. And it just doesn't really happen for her because it's just who she is. She's anxious. She's awkward. But we like her. She's charming. We know that she has gifts. We know she can be special, but she has a hard time getting that out to the other kids her age. And anyway, I did this movie where the designer, who's a friend of mine, called me and said, "Don't hang up. It's a tier 1, which is the lowest budget that I'm allowed to work on. It's a tier 1, but we're going to try to get you more money. And it films in your neighborhood, and I just want to send you the script. And once you read the script, if you say no, I'll thoroughly understand." And I read it, and I'm like, God damn it, I have to say yes to this one. My wife's going to kill me because I'm going to make less money being the boss of my department and all the responsibility of that. I'm going to make less money than if I were just showing up and having almost no responsibility. But I have to be part of this movie. And I'm so glad I did, And at the end of the day, they found ways to have the entire crew make enough money that we were covering our bills. Not much more than that, but we were not going backwards in the bank account. We were floating until the next, better budgeted movie or TV show came along. And I'm so glad I did that. And yeah, I do dogs. I don't mean to make myself sound like a mercenary. I'll do whatever pays me. But if you catch me at the right time, find me, I've got tuition payments coming up, or, we're a little behind on the mortgage, all the stuff that everybody worries about, no matter what job you do. You catch me at the right moment, sure, I'll do it. Because I like to work, and I've had fun experiences on bad movies. I've had terrible experiences on movies that have been nominated for Oscars. Some of it's about the people I'm working with. Is the director a jerk? Is the actor an asshole? Or are they all great? And maybe they can't tell the story worth a lick. And maybe this thing will never see a theater. But for the 2 months or 3 months I was on it, I had a fun time. We had a fun crew of people. And stories to tell and memories. So and if I do a movie like 8th Grade that can that is a good movie, then somebody sees that and they say, I want to make a movie like that too. Then again hey, let's tie that into the heart thing. It's legacy. I'm part of. I help every once in a while become a small part of the legacy. And you could IMDb me and you'll see there are some movies that I think will live on past my generation that they will come back to and talk about. And there's some that nobody's ever seen, and good reason for it, or sometimes not. I've worked on some wonderful things that just couldn't get a distributor because they didn't have superheroes or they didn't have wizards. They're just people talking and relating to one another and solving problems and crying or laughing. But there's simple human stories that just can't catch a break and get a distributor.
Well, what's obvious out of all of this is that you have an abiding love and a passion, not just for the aspect of it that you handle, but for the art form itself.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's got. I'm guessing, yeah, you're focusing on the healing process and making sure that everything's working out. But by the same token, are you kind of sitting there going, "Oh, I would need to get to work. I'd like to be in. I want to work." Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I can sound flip and say I've got tuitions to pay, and it's all true. But really, I want to, before it's all said and done, I still want to be on there. I want to, I'd love to have my name associated with something that has an influence on people. I mean, I saw Planet of the Apes, the very first one, the Charlton Heston one, in 1971, and that was really the first time I said, I don't know how they do it. I want to find out, and maybe I want to do that too. And from that, sprang a lifelong love of it and wanting to tell stories and hopefully affect, the other 7-year-olds out there that want to find out how we did this or that or anything or I mean, what was the Matewan massacre? What was Goodwin, Schwerner, and Cheney about or whatever. I could name so many things I've done that it's like, and even stuff I just day played on. I was there, on The Sopranos sometimes. You won't see my name in the credits, but I got to watch, that cast do the greatest, for my money, the greatest television show ever made. All due respect to The Wire, when it comes down to it, I'm going to watch The Sopranos every time. And I got to be there every once in a while. I'd be on that set. That's just amazing. That's a small part of his cultural history. That I'm just one of hundreds or thousands of soldiers that contributed something for. And and I'll never stop my love for that.
So
how about for an ending? Are we getting close?
Yeah. I'd say we are. I think you've got everybody rooting for you now, Dan.
Oh golly, yes. Well, thank you. I'm rooting for everybody too. I root for humanity, which is one reason I'm voting Democrat this year, or every year, for the rest of my life.
Yeah, right, precisely. What? Okay, so did you have to set up? We'll wrap this up, but damn it, you keep opening doors.
I know. It's not my fault you lose control of your show so easily, Bob.
Well, I'm not a control freak, so I'm okay with that.
And I'm a natural hijacker when it comes to these things. So
did you vote absentee? Have you already done that?
No, I'm gonna show up. I don't know. I like the act of physically showing up, and I always do. And I'm gonna put on my mask, and I'm gonna be in there, and I'm gonna do my thing. It's almost like your vote doesn't matter thing that I'm gonna say, and it's not meant that way at all. But New York is a solidly blue state, so in a certain way, my vote matters, but unless something goes freakishly wrong, my side in this state, my side wins every year, and that's good.
Yeah, but your state assembly, your state senate is not. So you've got an important vote. You've got an important vote there. Do you have a Democrat or a Republican in the House?
Well, you see, now you're going to ask me civics questions. Now, I passed the part of Jeopardy where movie trivia was a part of this. And you're going to make me sound like a bad citizen that I don't know the answer to your question. But this is the thing about me. When I'm done here, and I will be done soon, folks, you will return to the perfectly adequate Bob Kincaid show on the Horn after word from Sanka. I will, and I promise you, I will find out the answer to these questions that I don't know. Honestly, I tend to vote straight blue, and that's part of my.
Well, you've got a lot of people out there following Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I doubt if you're in her district.
Shame the crap out of me, Bob. Shame the fact that you know more about my state than I do.
This is my job. We've got an hour plus of lots of things I don't know about. You got to let me shine a little bit, Dan. Okay.
Please. You're the one with the show, my friend. Nobody's me on.
But it's interesting you say that you're gonna show up and you're gonna do it in person. I like to do that too, but I'm not taking a cereal bowl full of immunosuppressants every day.
That's true. But no, I'm at that point. I'll be 6 weeks out. Things are better. My prednisone levels are down. The medicine, the amount of prednisone I have to take every day is reduced by half from when I left the hospital. So I've been given the okay on this one. I got to keep the mask on. If there are people who have colds or coughs around me, I go to hospitals, like once a week or once every other week, which is, just a big building full of sick people. So it's not completely forbidden for me to be in any public scope. I don't know. I just feel more civic somehow.
Oh, I do too. I'm gonna do it too.
Absentee. My kids already voted absentee because they're up in Montreal. And Phoebe was really proud because she's 18, so she got to vote for her first time.
Aww.
Yeah.
Good for you, Phoebe.
She's so progressive. She makes me look like, whatever.
Barry Goldwater. Sure.
Barry Goldwater. I didn't want to go Trump, because that's not true.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to a friend.
I would be Bob Dole to her. That would be the analogy. Because I wouldn't even go Barry Goldwater. I'd say Bob Dole.
Bob Dole says, "Welcome to Walmart." Yeah.
Exactly.
Dan Fisher, thank you so much for all of this. This has been wonderful.
Yeah.
And we will come back with more and greater tales of life in the wonderful world of TV and movies. from the backstage perspective.
I am capable of a little bit of study every now and then, so maybe I'll try to come a little bit more prepared, and maybe we can go a little into the weeds in politics. But you'll certainly lap me and then some when it comes to that. But I mean, unless you want, I can be like the Hollywood Minute version of this of your show every once in a while if we want to.
You know what? Dan Goes to the Movies would be awesome, and not even necessarily talking about stuff that's currently in theaters, but I followed a thread of yours on Facebook of movies and music that you just loved, and I was there every time it got an update, and I was like, oh yeah, let me write that down.
Can I put one more thing before you really go?
I'm not the one who's going anywhere. I'm still going to be broadcasting. It's you, man. I told you, you get all the time you want.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just plug one more thing then, which is I don't know if you've been reading it all. I did it earlier, and I'm reposting it now, where I did a 52-part series on the story of my life, but through the perspective of what I watched on television for every year. So it starts in 1967 with Batman, and we go through like 1974 with Carol Burnett Show, through Saturday Night Live, through MTV, through Northern Exposure, and all the way to current time, which was in some cases it wasn't just what I watched. I worked on Law and Order, the original Jerry Orbach one, for 8 seasons. So there's a chapter on that. And what I do is I talk about myself, but I also try to filter it through how a show or a work experience on a show influenced me and changed me, and trying to make it not so me, just sort of a combination between a cultural essay and a personal essay. And that's on my Facebook page. And I guess if any of your listeners wanted to check it out, a writer writes to be read. And so I'd love for people to read it. And if you're friends with Bob Kincaid, you can find me, Daniel Fisher. I think so. In his friends, and you could friend me.
No, you're just Dan.
Yeah, I'm Dan. Oh, I'm Dan. Okay. So yeah, you could friend me, and then you could check it out yourself and tell me if you like it. Because again, I love to be read, and I think it's fun. Each day I did like a 1,300 to 1,500 word essay, which not everybody has time to read every day, but I don't know why. I had time on my hands, and I just did that, and I invite your listeners to check it out. And I get no money for it whatsoever, just vanity. But I invite your listeners to stroke my vanity whenever possible.
We all need it from time to time, and damn, it's fun. It feels good.
Yeah. Well, you don't have your own podcast if you're a shrinking violet who just wants to be left alone, right? You want people to listen to you, and you got, like I said, I've been listening to you, and you got lots of great things to say, and an interesting way of saying it, and more than adequate. You're beyond adequate. Beyond adequate.
Yeah, we could probably work some reverb into that, and it'd be really cool. Well, see, and you've already started a discussion, and of course people get passionate about these things. Sopranos, no. Breaking Bad, yes. So
yeah. Listen, that's the beauty, that's the fun of it all, right? You go to a movie. Where do you go on a date? A lot of times you go to the movies, right? Why? Because after the movie's over, you talk about the movie, and sure enough, she hates the movie, you like the movie. Now, if you're a skillful boyfriend or husband or potential of either of those, you know how to talk about that with your date in a way that says, honey, I like what I like, you like what you like, and we can still like each other and have sex. But if you want to get all, own Dan Fisher or own the lib about it or whatever, everybody wants to own each other now. It's like, okay, you know what? I happen to think I just go back to The Sopranos more than I do Breaking Bad. And I've seen Breaking Bad probably 3 times its entirety of seasons. I've seen The Wire probably about the same. I've seen The Sopranos probably 7 or 8 times. So that's just me. And you know what? There is no better. You could make a case that Full House is a better show, and who am I to say full of shit? It's just it's what you relate to. I loved the Planet of the Apes movies when I was a kid.
Hannah Montana or nothing, my friend.
Well, if you're 12 years old, as my daughter once was, Hannah Montana meant a lot to her then.
We went through that here.
Yeah. So, when you're a 12-year-old girl, you bet you'd rather watch Hannah Montana than The Wire. And as far as you're concerned, that's the better show. Now you change and you keep evolving. So, with all due respect to your angry troll-like listeners who might insist that yeah, Breaking Bad is, on a good day I might agree with you that Breaking Bad is a better show. I might watch it again sometime and you know what, that person was right.
What are you watching? What are you watching now?
What am I watching now? Well, I'll tell you what I'm watching now is I'm going back to movies. I'm sort of staying off TV for a while because when I was in the hospital, I thought that being in the, you see, we did it again, didn't we, Bob?
Yes,
We're
we
going
did.
down tangent road here. When I was in the hospital, I had the foolish idea that it's going to be a lot of me hanging out and sleeping while doctors occasionally do things. Being in a hospital is very, very busy work. You're constantly interrupted through day and night. People with clipboards coming in. Mr. Fisher, this. Can we take your blood? Can we ask you these survey questions? Do you want to be part of a medical test? You're interrupted throughout the day. It's time for your meds. It's time for your food. It's time for your vitals. So what I decided, to get back to your original question, in the hospital, I said to myself, while I'm here, I am not going to watch any episodic television. I'm not. Everybody wants me to watch Maniac. I'm not going to watch Maniac because I can't be interrupted constantly to watch something like that. So what I did in the hospital is I watched movies that I'd already seen, that I knew I liked, that if I got interrupted, I could stop it and I could pick it up and know what the hell was going on. So in that case, that's what I did. But then I did this thing too, and you were referring to the Facebook thing and the movie lists. I did that silly, I don't do challenges, right? I hate that thing of like, I challenge my friends to post a picture of a kitten for 10 days in a row, or I challenge my friends to show me their dinners. I don't do that stuff, right? But I did. Somebody challenged me in that silly movie thing, right, where I challenged Dan Fisher to put his 10 favorite movies for the next 10 days. Well, that's like saying I challenged Dan Fisher to breathe. Of course Dan Fisher's going to talk about movies for 10 days. He won't shut up about it. Take a show and completely hijack it if you let him. And Bob Cade adequately did. So anyway, so I answered the challenge, and for 10 days in a row, I posted stuff, right? And you're supposed to challenge other people and nominate other people. So I did, and most people ignored me as well they should have, right? But 3 of my friends, including a film director I worked with named John Gallagher, all answered my challenge and started posting their movies. And a lot of them were ones that, as cinephilic as I am, I'd never seen. I'd never seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I just hadn't. I don't like Westerns, so I thought I won't like spaghetti Westerns. Well, when I got home, I decided all of those movies that my friends went ahead and accepted my challenge, even though it's a pain in their ass to do so, they did it. I'm going to watch those movies. And so what I've been doing since I've been home is little by little, I'm working my way through the 30 movies that my 3 friends recommended. So I've watched The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and I've watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which I have seen before, but I really got it this time. And I love The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. It's like, wait a minute, maybe I don't hate Westerns anymore. There you go, Mr. Breaking Bad over there. Sometimes your minds change. Sometimes your perspective change. So the next time I watch Breaking Bad, I may think you're right. I may hate it.
Yeah, no spoilers, because I still haven't finished it, okay? I mean...
Breaking Bad?
Yeah, no spoilers.
It was all a dream.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good.
Wakes up and there's 3 farmhands sitting around staring at him,
yeah.
And it's in black and white.
Yeah, and you were there, Hank, and you were there, Zeke, right?
Yeah, and Rosebud is a meth pipe.
Exactly. You know what? You just found the perfect place to bring this to a close. This has been some
up for your own good.
No. This has been some of them. Well, it could happen, but this has been. I just have to tell you, Dan. This has been about an hour and 50 minutes of some of the most enjoyable conversation that I've had on this program in a very, very long time.
Hooray!
And it proves, it sort of continues to provide anecdotal proof of my theory of the value of conversation. And by the way, you're getting fan mail, all caps.
Hey.
Please bring Dan Fisher back. I love this talk so much. Please tell me you're going to bring him back. Well, that's entirely on you, Dan. But
my agent will get a hold of you, and
mine will talk to yours, and they'll have lunch. And right.
Next thing you know, I'm with the Kardashians. It gets disgusting.
Oh,
but no, I'm back. Of course I will.
Right.
And and like I said, I realize that talking about movies and TV, it's kind of like bringing the hamburgers and the fries to the picnic. And again, listening to some of your episodes as I did, it's like, there's definite broccoli in there, but it's good to have broccoli, and broccoli can, when cooked right, can be delicious, and certainly can provide your body with the things it needs. So I'm the hamburgers, and I'm happy being the hamburgers, and I would love to come back, and I'm thrilled that I have fans, and I'm a fan of anybody who's a fan, and I'm a fan of you, Bob, because you are not just adequate.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you very kindly, and you keep getting better, and we'll keep talking.
Sure will.
And we will come back, and the not the Hollywood Minute, but the Hollywood Hour, and as the tagline went when I was at CNN, we got to where we all did it. Sandy Kenyon, CNN, Hollywood, and so you can be that, Dan. But take care, my friend. Take care.
Okay, you too.
All right.
Be a donor.
Be a donor.
Stuff. You don't need it. You won't need it. Love you all. Bye.
Later. Bye now. And that's the truth. Nobody's gonna miss anything when they're gone. So yeah, organ donor, it's a good idea. And one of the nicest things, and I didn't get to mention this to Dan, is the fact that I get to now when I think about heart transplants, my mind does not have to go automatically to Dick Cheney. I can now think about my good friend, my dear friend, Dan Fisher. And every day that I don't have to think about Dick Cheney is a really much better day. And that is just a fact. So it's we're right at the top of the third hour. I need to update on the fundraising for this first day of the month. Remember, Shirley's challenge is on. Well, not Shirley's memorial challenge in memory of Bruce is on the table. And thanks to Charlene and John, who knows that we have this challenge on the first day of every month. Thanks to Charlene and John, we've only got $140 to finish fundraising and complete the challenge. So 14 folks at $10, 10 people at $14. How one person at $140, 2 at $70. Ooh, 4 at $35. The ciphering. But that's where it all stands. So hopefully in the next hour we will we'll bring in $140, and Shirley's memorial challenge will be a reality for another month, and we will go from there. That having been said, again, it is it's Thursday, and Thursdays mean what? Thursdays mean that we've got the Green News Report from Brad Friedman and Desi Doyen. So let's see what they've got. And of course, as ever, this is Conversation Radio. If you would like to be part of the conversation, chime right in. As soon as we get back from the Green News Report, we'll go to the stress line. The other line, 304-574-8178, or Skype to Skype, Bob Kincaid Horn. That's open too. So let's see where that takes us. And I'm getting it loaded now. I'm not getting loaded. I'm getting it loaded. But anyway, here's the Green News Report. And then your calls and whatever's on your mind. This is listener-supported Conversation Radio. This is The Horn. I'm Bob.
It's Thursday, November 1. 2018.
A Trump cabinet secretary was referred to the U.S. Justice Department for criminal investigation.
DOJ now investigating Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke.
Researchers from NOAA predict that we will see more of these mega storms as our oceans continue to warm.
New study finds even more buildup of heat in the oceans thanks to global warming. GM calls for an electric vehicle sales mandate. Plus,
this is a cry for help.
Teen climate activist in Sweden launches a kids' strike to combat climate change.
All of that striking news and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
They know the science is real. They're just making so much money they don't give a
Well, that was direct and correct. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, it looks like Ryan Zinke could be in trouble. I guess my only question here is, what took so long?
Well, Trump Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke is the subject of at least 18 known federal investigations into allegations of his ethics and other misconduct.
And yet he still hasn't been fired.
Correct. Now, the Inspector General of the Interior Department has reportedly referred at least one of those corruption investigations to the Justice Department. That's a sign that the federal government is considering a criminal investigation into Zinke's actions.
And yet he still hasn't been fired, and Congress hasn't even bothered to open an investigation of this guy?
Yes, well, it is a Republican majority Congress, so don't expect any action from them. CNN reports that the DOJ investigation may be about a real estate business deal between Zinke and the chairman of oil giant Halliburton. Startling new research finds a massive buildup of heat in the ocean. The Washington Post reports that the world's oceans have been soaking up far more excess heat in recent decades than scientists realized, as much as 60% more heat every year. That means more powerful storms, but also suggests that scientists may have underestimated the amount of warming we will see in coming decades, and that the planet could warm at an even faster rate than projected, giving governments even less time to shift away from fossil fuels and prepare for climate change impacts.
So the scientists were wrong again.
Sort of.
Get it right, scientists.
Utility Dive reports that U.S. auto giant General Motors has called for a national electric vehicle sales mandate in public comments to the Department of Transportation. A national sales mandate would require car makers to sell a minimum number of electric vehicles every year. GM said it would get more than 7 million electric vehicles on the road by 2030, but environmental groups derided GM's proposal as, quote, trying to gaslight the American people, because earlier this year, GM joined other auto companies in pushing the Trump administration to roll back the Obama administration's updated mileage and emission standards that would have effectively achieved the same goal of promoting electric vehicle sales.
You know, nothing is stopping GM from making electric cars and selling them, just saying, GM.
But some good news, U.S. airline Delta has announced it plans to join other major airlines in ditching plastic straws and stirrers on board all of its flights, and said that it will stop wrapping its amenity kits in plastic to help fight the scourge of plastic pollution.
So there's that.
Yeah, but it won't start until next year. The good news, however, is that major companies are finally acknowledging the epic stupidity of digging up fossil fuels that have been buried for millions of years to make a plastic item used for only a few seconds that pollutes the environment for hundreds of years. Finally, at a rally to get out the vote in Nevada last week, President Obama called the midterm elections on November 6th the most important elections we have yet lived through.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot. The stakes are high.
That's not an exaggeration when it comes to the accelerating impacts of dangerous man-made climate change, and a young climate activist in Sweden agrees. At a climate rally in Helsinki over the weekend, Swedish teen climate activist Greta Thunberg launched a kids' strike to boycott school to push politicians to move quickly on climate. Thunberg urged adults like those in the U.S. who are old enough to vote in the midterm elections to think seriously about the consequences of the choices they make today.
The future of all the coming generations rests on your shoulders. What you do now with children can't undo in the future. So please, treat the crisis as the crisis it is and give us a future. Our lives are in your hands.
Yeah, any excuse not to go to school. Wish I had thought of that. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
9 minutes past the hour on this Thorn in the Side Thursday, the first day of November. And, a bunch of stories to wander into. Let's see where we're going to wander first, though. Let's run over to the stress line. Hey, welcome to the program.
Hi, Bob. It's Paul from Parts Unknown. Am I coming in clearly?
Oh, that's awesome. Paul from Parts Unknown. It's been a while. How are you, my friend? You're coming in great.
I'm good. I am currently stuck in traffic. I work an early day today. Usually I'm out here on the West Coast. I'm working while your show's going on, but I took an early day and I'm driving up to my folks to give my mother a birthday present. Her birthday is on Saturday.
Happy birthday to Mom.
Yeah. So, yeah, I had some time to call and just stuck in city traffic. So I basically just wanted to kind of check in and say hi and let folks know that I will, in a couple weeks here, I'm going to start production on the Pullmans.
Well, I didn't want to be pushy or anything, but I was going to ask about the Pullmans. So they're going to happen?
Yeah, assuming there's still almonds after the election.
Well, that's true too. I mean, there's who knows what comes after the election?
Yeah, well, not just the election. I hope I hope that the Democratic Party takes the House and things kind of bottom out and turn back in a better direction. But a thought keeps crossing my mind. You're one of the Trump administration. We pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords, and we pulled out of the Iran deal. And year two of the administration, we've got kids locked up in cages, hundreds of troops going to the Mexican border to stop a caravan that's still hundreds of miles away traveling by foot, and massive voter suppression, and cozying up to Putin. What does year three hold and year four?
I'm afraid to even wonder, Paul.
Well, looking forward is kind of part of the job of being a scientist, so I can't help it.
I understand. So, do you have any good guesses?
No. Well, for the voting thing, I would like to think that we will take back the House. I work with numbers. The numbers say that we should. The shenanigans, however, are unpredictable. We don't see a lot of shenanigans in science.
So I take it from what you're saying, Paul, that you have basically you're kind of conceding the Senate.
Mathematically, it's highly unlikely. You're depending on Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz in Texas has got a fairly good shot, but you're depending on no Democratic senators losing, which who knows? You're out in West Virginia. How close is the Joe Manchin race out there?
It is said to be narrowing, but at this point, it has narrowed to what? It's narrowed to like 9 points. Manchin's out front by 9.
Oh, that's good. So I mean,
of the Democrats who had to hang on, the one who is probably most at risk, at least based on the numbers I've seen, is Heidi Heitkamp out in North Dakota, and they have done everything in their power to disenfranchise the Native American vote out there, who was largely responsible for her success in her first election.
Yes, and that situation out there drives me crazy. I don't want to get angry. There's so much emotion behind it, and also from a logical point of view, you're denying American citizens the right to vote de facto. You need a street address. Where I live does not have a street address.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just
it would be
gobsmacked by it.
well, and that would be enough to keep you from voting in a place like North Dakota.
Well, no, I mean, as a judge, as a fair person, as someone that's supposed to be non-biased, I like to think that scientists could make pretty good judges because we're supposed to look at facts. We're supposed to try to remain as non-biased and keep our own opinions and point of view out of our job and our decisions. And so I think like a judge should do that. And if you physically can't perform the actions necessary to vote, which is a right guaranteed by the Constitution, then the law has to be struck down if things are working correctly. That is a situation where things are not working correctly. And it's so blatantly obvious, I'm gobsmacked how this is not across the news. There's a travesty of justice and a violation of civil rights. I'm sure that a lot of people have their opinion, but it should be being shouted from the rooftops instead of us being treated to a governmental lesson on whether or not the President of the United States can repeal constitutional amendments by executive orders.
Well,
That's just my opinion.
No. I agree with you. And the sad fact is, there are a number of people who have complained, and particularly people associated with science over the years, that when judges get hold of science-based pleadings or science-based controversies, their status as not being scientifically trained tends to make a mess of things.
You can't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Please, you.
You can't have a judge. Having a judge trying to make a scientific conclusion is like me trying to make a legal conclusion. I have to have years of experience with presidents and know the history of the case and the situation and law as it's come up. Science is not just looking at numbers and following trends. You have to comb through data and understand where outliers are, and when you see a study, that's why there's peer review. When you see a study, you've got to really look at it and understand where it is in the context, and because they can be misleading even though the numbers are true. Numbers can't lie, but liars can figure, or whatever that old saying is that I'm totally screwing up. My mother sent me an article about how global warming wasn't happening because of the relative stability of the temperatures in Boston and Chicago or something like that over the past few years. And I had to explain to her that those are two pinpoints in an entire scheme of climate data that are outliers that are being projected as the truth. And yes, the numbers are correct, but you're not taking those numbers in the context of the whole. And that takes time and training. And I can look at numbers and data on a huge spreadsheet because I've been doing it so long and kind of go and just kind of like intuitively like pick out things to look at deeper because the trend doesn't make sense, or this is too perfect of a line. Why is this so perfect? You would see outliers. You would see bumps in the data. This is like a bullseye shot from 200 yards in heavy wind with, no problems, and you got it off in one shot and with no practice. It makes me suspicious, and that's kind of the data of the scientific training in the scientific realm when it comes to data.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, but getting out of the weeds and onto the Senate race, the Senate is very unlikely. You would need everything to go right. You would need Heidi Camp to go right. You would need Joe Manchin to go right. You need Beto O'Rourke to go right. You need the Senate win in Nevada, and you need a Senate win in Arizona to realistically hold on to it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, it got a little bit better, not to say good, But when it looked like, for instance, Phil Bredesen in Tennessee had a fighting chance, that has fallen off since, largely because of an unforced error that he committed in running his yap about the Kavanaugh hearing. And when he said, well, I'd vote to confirm Kavanaugh, because apparently Phil Bredesen hasn't figured out that maggots aren't going to vote for him. It's something that Joe Manchin suffers from as well. But when he said that he would have voted to confirm Kavanaugh, a whole lot of excitement in Tennessee just dried up and blew away. Yep. And at one point in time, he had been leading, Marsha Gedneth Blackburn. He was out in front, and now he's chasing her.
Yeah, that confuses me. I might live in a bubble. I do actually, but I've been very confused about how, as we get closer to the election, with all the special elections that have been happening in the run-up to these midterms over the past year, we have big wins in unexpected places like Conor Lamb in Pennsylvania, where Trump won by 20-some-odd points, and Conor Lamb gets out there, and they talk about how the Democratic Party in general had a 12-point lead over the Republican candidates in general, and that lead has been shrinking and shrinking and shrinking as we approach the election. And I haven't seen anything that in the news that would make me think that there are people that suddenly weren't gonna vote for the Republican Party and vote for Trump, in a sense, suddenly want to vote for him. You know what I mean? Everything that's been happening in the news would make me think that would energize the progressive base and the liberal base. I would think that Kavanaugh being confirmed would make a conservative relax and a liberal get out and to the polls and be angry, not the other way around. It makes me think that it's just media trying to make it look like a horse race.
Well, and that's the problem in a race like Bredesen's in Tennessee. He pissed off a whole lot of people, men and women alike, and arguably justifiably so. But that's if you view him in the universe in which it's just about him. Marsha Blackburn is, as the saying goes, crazier than a sprayed roach. And she's all cuddly with a Tennessee guy who's up to his eyeballs in Russians and the National Ruble Association. And she would be millions of times worse than Phil Bredesen. But you can't win. It's hard to win political races on, hi, vote for me, I don't suck quite as much. And that's a pity. That's a pity. A lot of energy dropped off. There was actually some hope that a former Clinton administration official might have had a fighting chance in Mississippi. That conversation, that talk isn't being heard anymore. So, at best, well, if Heidi Heitkamp fails, and she's said to be down like 8-10 points now, if she fails, and we don't pick up a seat in either Tennessee, Nevada, or Texas, there's
discount Arizona.
Well, no. I'm right. I'm actually. It looks like Kristen Sinema may actually take that race. Martha McSally, her opponent, complained the other day, "I'm getting my ass kicked over Obamacare."
Yeah, it's not just healthcare. I've got a couple of good friends, a married couple that live down in Arizona now, and they're both teachers, and they're part of the entire teacher strike that happened last year in Arizona. It wasn't as heavily as reported on as West Virginia, but it did happen, and they're still organizing, and it's, at least among the teachers down there, it's very plain. No matter what side of the political spectrum you are on, you have to vote Democratic this year to get funding for schools on the state level and the local level and nationally as well. You might see some surprise turnout there. I've got a very good feeling about Arizona.
Well, I hope, and that would be a great thing to get a Democratic senator out there. And I'm still, I'm with our buddy John Britovo in regard to Beto. I think he's got a real strong fighting chance. He's within the margin of error in at least one poll, and that gives that would be tectonic, or Titanic, as the case may be, to oust Rafaelito from that Senate seat. It would shake the nation. Then, of course, we haven't even mentioned Florida and the race between Bill Nelson and Skeletor.
Yeah. And you're right, we haven't heard much of that because it's all Andrew Dillon and his opponent. I can't remember his name for the governorship.
Oh, Ron Monkey Up DeClantis?
Yeah, DeClantis, yes. Oh, wait, that's not his last name.
No, it's DeSantis. I just turned it into DeClantis, given how cozy he's gotten with the racists in this. What a filthy race that thing has turned into.
What do you mean turned into?
Well, I mean, from jump, he hadn't been the nominee for 12 hours before he used the monkey up line.
Yeah, and it's just so divisive, and everyone's on their side. I wanted to ask you a question, and also maybe put it toward the Florence family. You said a couple times your political awakening as a younger teenager was during the Watergate affair in the 70s because your parents had it on all the time?
Yeah, I was like 10.
Okay, well, I'm still going to ask this question. I just have to assume that in the run-up to the investigation, in the run-up to Nixon resigning, during the investigation, there had to be some similar tribal division. You had to have a lot of people on one side saying Nixon's a crook, he's obviously did it, what's taking so long, and another side saying, he's the president, he would never do such a thing, he's such an honorable man, and there was division. After Nixon resigned, how did the people come together? Did the division stop so much? Because it doesn't matter in the long run for the problems we face, whether the Democrats take the House or the Senate or the presidency. We have to stop fighting each other. When it comes to the global climate change and the problems we face with mechanization and the economy and the 21st century coming to full bloom technology-wise, we're going to have to come together and work together to solve some of these problems. And I'm just curious if A, if that happened post-Nixon, and B, if so, how did it happen?
Well, it's that has the potential to be a 30-minute answer, Paul.
Oh dear.
One of the things you have to take into account is, I said that I became aware because it was on TV every afternoon when I came home, and the reason was because there were 3 channels. Okay, there was very little hope of any kind of escape because click ABC, click CBS, click NBC, and they're all covering the hearings. So you didn't have an overtly partisan network there for people who were say in Nixon's corner, and there were many who could retreat into there and be told that it was all a lie and it was a big witch hunt. I don't know that we underestimate the effect of Fox News, but it's possible that Fox News is underestimated by folks out there in their day-to-day lives. If they're already tuning into Fox News, they're already they've already had their minds reprogrammed. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is that a lot of seedy, filthy shit was exposed in the Watergate investigations that then had to be further investigated. And that did happen. And there were some legislative reforms. But there was also a whole lot of back patting. There were a lot of broken arms of people patting themselves on the back and celebrating having gotten rid of a notorious criminal instead of trying to figure out a way to keep the next one from coming in. Among other things, we forget, or tend to forget, that Ronald Reagan in 1976 very nearly in the primary process unseated Gerald Ford as the Republican who was the incumbent president, for God's sakes. And even though he didn't pay a penalty for it, arguably Iran-Contra and all the other skullduggery that administration engaged in was orders of magnitude worse than Watergate. So there's that. And then the third thing is that there were a lot of people in this country, they tended to be younger, who despised Nixon, hated him from Vietnam forward. There were older Americans who despised him from his rabid red baiting days. So that's what you've got in the way of an opposition. On the other hand, there were millions of Americans who said things like, and you can catch their grandchildren and children saying it to this day, well, Nixon didn't do nothing that other presidents didn't do. He just got caught. And then there were the devotees who simply said were with him until that moment when he waved bye-bye stepping into the helicopter. I mean, it was a different time. It was not that different a time, with the exceptions that I've noted. How does this country come together? Well, you and I, Paul, don't have any problem acknowledging the reality of climate change, and neither does this community, or on a broader basis, people that call themselves liberals, progressives, some moderates. But so much money has been poured into the denial of climate change that it has effectively deafened a significant portion of the country. But the larger problem is the legislature itself. You might get some climate change legislation if you ever get a Democrat House, a Democrat Senate, and a Democratic president who's serious about the gravity of the issue. You know, it's like something Jeff Biggers said a few nights ago when I talked to him. We cannot evolve around climate change. It requires radical action.
Incredibly radical action at this juncture.
You probably have an idea. You probably have a better idea of how radical the change needs to be than most of us do, Paul.
Well, yes, I was listening a few weeks ago to Friday on the Front Porch, and in the I'm terrible with names. I apologize. He has Little Thunder. Works in
Laurel, yeah.
And he was commenting on climate change, and he's been following it, and his opinion is correct. We have passed a point of definite no return in terms of we're going to see some massive changes and some catastrophic ones, and we are beyond stopping. We are beyond cutting back. We are beyond cap and trade. That stuff had to happen in the 90s. That ship has sailed. To really preserve our place on this planet in a way that is even close to how we live today in 50 years is going to take massive radical action in terms of I've seen and heard people around the water cooler at work talk about some ideas on the board that are like massive atmospheric converters, the size of large, like a city block, positioned in multiple places around the globe. It would take a 21st century New Deal plan to go to renewable technology and build atmosphere converting technology and build farming technology to create crops and not just genetically modified. I've seen some scientific papers, because I live in an agriculture area, talking about how you can put polymers, organic polymers, around the seeds of plants that will stick water to them more, so that it actually takes less water to help them grow, because the water adheres to the plant stronger than it adheres to the soil. So there are multiple solutions being researched to get around these problems we're going to be encountering in the future. And I still have hope that we can pull ourselves back from the brink because those options are available. But realistically, you're going to have a campaign in 2020. You have to have a presidential candidate. I don't care which party they come from at this point, that has a platform that the 2020s have to be that building block. You have to get a presidential candidate like Kennedy was in the 60s that says by the end of this decade, we will have renewable energy and rooftops in every house in America, and we will be funding a massive infrastructure program to help turn the tide on climate change before it's too late. That's realistically what has to happen at this juncture.
Do you realistically see that happening, given the influence of corporations on our government?
Yes, because the younger generation, you're right, there are people that deny climate change, but across the political spectrum that I encounter, I have conservative friends, and those friends have conservative friends. Climate change is really not much of a debate if you're 35 and under, especially if you've got kids. Because that's a hard thing to deny when you've got an 8-year-old and trying to figure out what their life's going to be like when they're 35 or 40. What kind of planet are we leaving them? You know it in your gut, I think, at a certain level, if you're young enough. And also the millennial voters are if they will register and vote, they're a larger voting bloc than the baby boomers. I think that you can overcome the ignorance. It just won't happen in time. Also, I think that you're going to have multiple events, weather-wise, in the next few years that are going to make climate change undeniable, especially in the South, especially in Florida. I mean, it's already undeniable on the beach. Most of the people in Miami already see that the sea's rising and you're getting salt water into the sewer systems at high tide, and it's only going to get worse. You're going to have multiple hurricanes of high power more frequently happening. It's already happening, but it's going to happen more frequently in the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf Coast area. And so it's going to become sort of an undeniable reality for the areas that are denying it kind of first. So those are the factors that give me hope. What scares me the most in the future is the Democratic Party takes the House in this midterm election. The economy will lay a goose egg, and I emphasize on the word will, in the near future. I was hoping it would lay it before the Democratic Party took power in one of the branches of government. But unfortunately, it may last long enough that it happens in early 2019 or late 2019 that basically, economy crashed. It's because you elected Democrats. Vote Trump 2020. Make America great again.
Oh, that's horrifying.
Well, I mean, if you really watch, I've been following politics since Bush went to the Iraq War pretty closely, and the GOP playbook is derivative. I don't understand how we keep getting beat. It's, they constantly they don't have, for football terms, they constantly just have a ground game. They always run the ball. They never put it in the air. And I don't understand how the other side is completely flummoxed and not ready for what they're going to do. It's just a rehash of it again and again and again. It's the same attacks that will call you, we'll accuse you of going to raise taxes and that you're soft on crime or you're soft on terror, and those are your problems. And it's been pushing 20 years now since 9/11. You haven't come with a play. You haven't come with a retort. My frustration, sorry.
No, that's see, I keep going back to I mean, I was really happy back in the 2016 campaign cycle when somebody asked Bernie what is the greatest threat the United States faces, and he answered climate change. But then on the next day it was all haul. That crazy Bernie Sanders thinks climate change is more dangerous to us than North Korea or the Iran. And you know, I don't run around trying to just be a little ray of sunshine, Paul. You know, I hope the young voters that you're talking about really do vote with extreme prejudice.
They will eventually. The House is going to be taken. You may not take the Senate, but you're going to defend a lot of Democratic seats in the Senate for the next 6 years. Aren't there something like 26 or 27 Democratic? There are 27 Senate races that have Democratic incumbents currently in the office this year, right?
Yeah, and in 2020 it flips, and Republicans will have to defend 20 plus Senate seats.
Yeah, this is what the message really hasn't descended. Not descended, but the message hasn't really disseminated down to the fact that this is going to be a long siege. It's not going to be a one vote, we did it, yay, cheerlead, we're done. To really get this out, you're going to have to commit to basically on the ground grassroots work, pushing progressive policies, harassing your elected representatives for 5 to 8 years to really get to where you want to be. Or at least me, or I want to be personally, because that's kind of how the system is designed. It's designed to. If you want things to change, you really got to want it. You got to want it every election. You got to want it every time, every day, to really turn the boat around. America is politically a big cruise ship, and grabbing the wheel and turning it 20 degrees to the right for 3 minutes isn't going to change your direction much if you hand the wheel back over.
Well, that's absolutely the truth. So. You know, I confess to getting up every morning now between now and Election Day and waiting for another shoe to drop. You know, Trump is desperate. I mean, this latest ad that says that if the Democrats take control, criminals are going to pour across the goddamn borders. It's the most ugly racist ad in recent memory. And he's desperate to try to turn the conversation back to a bunch of poor, terrified people trying to flee violence. And you know, when you've got people who are out there saying, well, you know, they're bringing smallpox, when smallpox does not exist.
It does.
I mean, in a lab, but...
It's not going to spontaneously pop up. But
there's nobody with smallpox coming from Guatemala or Honduras. Can we say that?
Yes. As a scientist, I would say that is incredibly unlikely to the point of you can ignore it.
and yet it's not being ignored because it's being pumped out 24/7 over on Fox and some other right-wing outlets. You know.
I know. It's frustrating because I am concerned about disease. I'm concerned about the polio-like virus that's attacking children in the United States now. I'd rather not focus on people that possibly could perhaps have smallpox that could infect us if they possibly walked across the border 4 weeks from now. I'm concerned about American children having issues with disease today. And
right. I mean, I've read about that. I've read about that mystery disease, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, there's a litany of stories. I'm just tired of looking at the news and going, "That's not news." I mean, compared to everything else that's going on, the president says he can repeal the 14th Amendment. Well, he can't, and he's a windbag. Next story, please. That's not news. He's an idiot. we have real serious, honest-to-God problems in this country, from poor infrastructure to air pollution to climate change problems to disease to another thing that's overlooked, because I have an 8-year-old stepdaughter in the education system, and an education system is our education system is in shambles. We've got students loaded with debt in college, and beyond that, we've got kids in school who have these high-pressure tests with the standardized testing, and the whole situation's high pressure. My stepdaughter does not eat her lunch very often that we pack her to school because she has 20 minutes to eat it. And she's a talker. She likes talking. She's social. So at the lunch table, she spends time chit-chatting with the kids and talking and engaging and kind of, nibbles on her lunch a bit, and then 20 minutes is up like that. And she, eats about a third of her lunch. I remember having a full half hour to eat in about 10 minutes. Like it was a whole 40-minute break for lunch, 45-minute break for lunch as a kid in the 80s. These are serious concerns that are being overshadowed by that windbag. And of everything Trump has done besides putting kids in cages, this is his greatest unseen destructive power, his narcissism. Look at me, look what I'm doing, look what I'm tweeting, look who I am. Look at me, look at me, look at me. It's my real hair. I have a great body. I know these things. And the media are just locked onto him and will not let go. The best way to defeat him is ignore him. He's an idiot. I call him President Biff Tannen before he was ever president. The behind-the-scenes footage for Back to the Future series, the actor that played Biff Tannen in the 80s said he modeled his character, especially in Back to the Future 2, where you've got old Biff, the rich, jerk, after Donald Trump. And I just want to have people look at him like Marty McFly does and go, he's an asshole. Why are we listening to him? He's a buffoon. And, sorry, that's my vent on the president. He's distracting us from our real problems, and everything's going to shit.
And meanwhile, he's just trying to grift a little bit more grift and out of people's pockets and into his own.
I will pay him to leave at this point. It would be cheaper in the long run.
That's an interesting question. How much do you think he'd walk away for?
Oh, I don't know, but I would offer him billions of dollars. I will pay you the $10 billion that you bragged that you had if you go away. I may let him negotiate me up to 20. Like, take the money, no prosecution, get the fuck out. Take Pence with you.
And just and let us get back to the business of trying to survive, to say the 22nd century.
I really want Trump to be impeached. I would love the satisfaction of having him humiliated for all of time, but you have convinced me beyond the possibility numerically of impeachment, and some other friends of mine. We don't have time for that shit. To quote, Trevor Noah in the Taylor Show. We don't have time to indulge in that cathartic, release.
Well, you don't. Realistically, in politics, and frankly, I would guess in science, Paul, you do not perform experiments whose outcomes you already know and which you know will be a failure.
You do actually, but only to a certain point.
But what I'm saying is that if is there any point scientifically in engaging in another in say going back and trying to prove that the alchemists were right, and making the container to hold the universal solvent and transmuting lead into gold?
Only as a passing fancy. There are scientific breakthroughs that have happened in science based on experiments that were known to fail and that suddenly worked, and they shouldn't have worked. It's very rare, but yes, we do try things that we know will fail or possibly could fail, but we don't. They're not at the top of the list. We don't invest large amount of resources in them.
Right, and if the risk of harm is greater than the risk of either neutral or success, I mean, it's like, you know, oh, look, we found some ancient DNA in a mastodon, and we think we can genetically engineer a unicorn out of it. It's beyond that, though. It's not even so much philosophical as mathematical.
Yeah.
I have no reason to believe that there's anything Donald Trump could do that would make 27, 28, 29 Republican senators say, that's it. That's a bridge too far.
I would disagree. He could attack them. I saw the headline in the article about him, picking a fight with Paul Ryan, and as a retiring, he's not running again. As a retiring Speaker of the House, I kind of had a daydream of him today, just sort of like getting on a pony in a press conference and saying, I'd like to respond to the president and his statements about me this morning. And I would like to say this. President Donald Trump, go fuck yourself. Any questions? I think there's a point.
Oh, I think to a certain extent we all do that, and I think we all dream, Paul, of a day when maybe Republicans do something more than that Jeff Flake, Bob Corker stuff. Oh, I disagree with him. Now here, let me. Is there something I can vote with him on?
If their job's on the line, they'll turn on him, especially if he's attacking them.
Well, you know what? If he costs them the House, maybe there's a little bit of a learning curve. But I'm still really, really not at all sanguine about the Senate.
Well, good. I want people to not relax. I don't want people to feel easy about this election. I want everyone to come forward and vote. I don't care who you vote for. Just with one voice, where do you stand, so we can move on with our democracy and move forward.
Well, there's two races really that for me are sort of coal mine canaries on whether there really is a blue wave out there. In the Senate,
Beto O'Rourke is one.
In the Senate, it's Beto O'Rourke versus Cruz. And in the House, it's Steve King. That guy has, it's not like he just turned into a Nazi yesterday. He was elected on a nativist platform of making, really, he went, the people of his district in Iowa sent him to the House of Representatives because he promised he would go, now this is Iowa, bread and butter issues, we got to be able to sell the soybeans, we got to be able to sell the corn, et cetera, we got to protect the farmers, But they sent him to Congress because he promised he would go to Congress and make English the official language. And that was his beginning. I mean, it's the calves like cantaloupes comment. It's the Confederate flag that he kept on his desk. And just this week, his fellow Republicans finally figured out that he's a racist and well on his way to being a full-on goose-stepping Nazi. If that guy loses and Beto wins, then we may have turned a corner. Because Steve King was safe in his seat in Iowa for the rest of his life, up until this year. If there's that significant a change in a place like Iowa, then there's hope for Mississippi and Georgia and the Georgia governor's race, the Florida governor's race.
Yeah. Kansas too. That's right. Just of the voter suppression and, like I said, the shenanigans that are going on, and it's. I don't want to take up all your time. You might have another caller, but I just that also is my number one frustration. Like, just stop cheating. It's cheating. You're obviously cheating, and what makes me angry is you're not even really trying to hide it. It's obvious if you just look at it in the objective eye. Oh yeah, one polling place in Dodge City, we're moving it out of the city, away from the bus route, in a swamp, underneath the basement. You know, and it's just the ridiculous level of it. And the person in charge of it is running for governor. What happened to the appearance of impropriety? You just don't even care to hide it from us anymore. You're just so blatantly horrible.
Well, there's we will wrap up here. I'm awfully glad you called, Paul. It's good to hear from you. You know, we don't hear from you a whole bunch, but I'm always happy when we do.
I would wrap up on this, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have been working. If it's a good barometer of how life is and how the economy is, I have been working 44 hours, I'd say, on average, since late February of this year, a week. Sometimes more. I'm definitely on the low side. And I get paid by the hour, fortunately, so I get overtime money. But I'm not seeing too much of a financial benefit. I'm breaking even. And it's because, you know, the washing machine went out, had to buy a new washing machine. I accidentally set my riding lawnmower on fire trying to fix it. Had to replace the lawnmower with a push mower.
That sounds like something I would do.
Yeah. My wife informed me that if a blade gets broken and I'm trying to bend it back into place, take the mower deck off rather than turning the riding lawnmower upside down and fixing it that way, I might have made a little more progress. I'm not a mechanical engineer, let me put it that way. But still, and I'm not the only one. A lot of the people in our circle of friends and extended friends on Facebook were working harder this year, especially, just to break even. And not a lot of us are getting ahead. We're just busting our hump more to stay even. And I think that defines the Trump economy. And I hope next year's better. I hope things will change. But it's hard to, and very taxing energy to be putting so much more time and effort into working and putting food on the table for your family and trying to hang on with your fingernails and not make any headway. Just keep where you're at.
Right, but, you know, well, look, at one point the benchmark was, oh, Wall Street is doing so great, our economy is booming, Wall Street's never done better than it's done under me. And now Wall Street has vomited up everything it gained in 2018.
Yep.
And suddenly he's not talking about Wall Street so much anymore.
Yeah, and so that's kind of my take on reality. Parts unknown out here. And it's good to talk to you too, and I will definitely email. I'm trying to get the Pullman Challenge happening in like mid-December so I can get them out. I can get them to the people that want them
by Christmas.
During Christmas.
Yeah.
I usually get them by New Year's because I'm just so packed. I'm going to try to start earlier.
Well, you know what? You would be surprised. I hear about the Pullmans all year long, Paul.
Well, I haven't listened to John Betterville podcast, but I've listened to him. I want to, and I've listened to him on the Party on the Front Porch, and I'm definitely going to try to apportion some to send it to him as a gift to bring into the children of the Horn family as an enjoyer of the Palmer.
Well, I'll tell you what. Keep me posted, please, because the minute that you put them up for offer, they will be gone in minutes. It's the darndest thing. I mean, people go wild over them. Paul, I hope the traffic clears soon. And
yes, I'm just up now.
Well, see, that's the magic of the horn. All we had to do. Yeah. So have a safe trip home and home to Mom. Happy birthday to Mom. And take care of yourself, and don't be such a stranger, okay?
I won't, and you have a nice night, Bob. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul. Take care. That's our buddy Paul from Parts Unknown, the creator of Paulmans, which have become a holiday tradition here at the Horn. Halloween's passed, and so I had to run to Charleston today and back, and damn, all the Christmas stuff is already out. Well, I'll take it as a win that I didn't see any, swastika Christmas ornaments hanging or anything, so you take your victories where you can get them. Thanks, everybody. I didn't, we had Shirley's Memorial Challenge on the table this evening. Hopefully that maybe will get met overnight. That would be awesome. But because of the nature of the conversation this evening, if it doesn't get met, I think I've probably got the permission to carry it over to tomorrow, because people may have been thoroughly and completely engaged in the conversation I was having with Dan. Thanks to Dan Fisher this evening, by the way, for a generous gift of his time to talk about his recent experiences. I think it was a fantastic conversation because it wrapped so many things in together. Healthcare, the necessity and essential decency of a middle-class union lifestyle, family, and a career that is briefly interrupted, but will get back to being very exciting again. So, yeah, Dan will be joining us again, I suspect, and maybe we'll get a little more political then, too. But there's also value in stepping, trying to find a little piece of dry ground and stepping up out of the swamp. And I hope you enjoyed that as well. Thanks to all of you who keep the program on the air. Thank you very kindly to to everyone who shares their precious finite time engaged in the program. Thank you to our all-volunteer staff. Thanks to Sparky and Steve in the chat room this evening. Thanks to our all-volunteer staff, including Sparky and Steve. Thank you to our news ninjas, and thank you to Brother Deacon Asa, headon.live. Thanks to John Fox in Australia. Thanks, Ben Birch, whiterosesociety.org. And thanks to the hardest-working, bravest people I know, the men and women of Coal River Mountain Watch, crmw.net. And always, 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 Gina, it's all for you. Later, y'all.